Hey guys, tonight, we'll saddle up and ride quietly into a world where the dominant scents are sweat, red dust, and cow dung. The Wild West isn't as glamorous as the movies make it seem, and being a cowboy is far less romantic than you might think. You'll eat and sleep among flies, ride until your thighs burn, and sometimes fight a very impatient bull for a place to lie down. And the worst part? No one ever pays on time. So if you think rough, unforgettable journeys like this are worth a few minutes of your evening, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you can, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I always enjoy imagining the little map of dusty dreamers out there. Tuning in together, now then, dim the lights, turn on a fan if you like a bit of background wind, and lie very still. And join me as we step into a night filled with dust, sweat, and the thunder of hooves. In the world of dreams, right now, you're standing ankle deep in a thick stew of mud and manure, your boots making wet, awful sounds with each reluctant step. Every squelch reminds you that your dignity has taken a leave of absence. The sun, high and brutal, shows no mercy. It scalds your neck until your skin cracks and peels like weather-worn leather. You smell like death warmed over, like something that expired last week, then rose from the dead just to come back and haunt the same patch of pasture. And that's on a good day. You've always seen cowboys as stoic, silent types, right? The kind with sun-beaten faces, permanent squints, and heroic postures atop proud horses beneath dramatic crimson sunsets. But the truth? You're basically a glorified ranch janitor who happens to wear a cool-looking hat. A typical day starts before the birds are up. Around 4 in the morning, your boss, a crusty old rancher who smells like chewing tobacco and long-forgotten regrets, shuffles over and jabs you awake by nudging your bedroll with the tip of his boot. You've got exactly 5 minutes to rub the sleep out of your eyes and shake the scorpions out of your boots. Then it's off to the races. You'll spend the next several hours chasing stubborn cattle, cleaning filthy water troughs, and mending fences that, somehow, keep breaking in the exact same place every other day. And that hat you're wearing? It's not just there to look good. It's your only line of defense against the elements. It shields your eyes from the blinding sun, keeps the rain from dripping directly into your face, and on rare occasions, acts as a makeshift helmet when a low-flying hawk mistakes your scalp for prey. But even that trusty hat can't filter the stench. And trust me, nothing can. The smell sticks to you like a curse. People tend to think the Wild West was a dry, cracked wasteland from dawn to dusk. But they're wrong. The day starts off wet. Everything is slick with dew, including your saddle and, unfortunately, your socks. Then, by the time the clock strikes noon, everything flips. The air gets bone dry. The ground hardens like burnt cornbread, and you start to fall apart. Your lips split like old parchment. Your fingers crack open and bleed. Your thighs, worn raw from hours in the saddle, start to chafe and sting. And the worst part? There's no ointment, no balm, no soothing cream to ease the pain. There's just more dust. Always more dust. Let's talk about your horse for a moment. You probably thought you'd ride some noble steed with a heart of gold. Wrong. Your horse has a name that sounds cute, something like Snuffy or Trigger, but don't let it fool you. He's a menace. He glares at you like he's your ex and you still owe him money. He snorts with disgust every time you come near. He pretends to limp just to slow down the day, and when he's feeling especially vindictive, he lets you get halfway into the saddle before launching into a wild spin that sends you flailing like a rag doll, but you ride anyway. You ride straight into that endless, shimmering horizon, where the only company you'll have is the constant buzzing of flies, your own sweaty regret, and the haunting echo of your choices. You wave your arms, whistle sharp notes through cracked lips, and shout yourself hoarse at cattle who look right through you. These creatures, each the size of a small car and twice as grumpy, smell like soup that's gone terribly wrong and have about as much charm as an overdue tax bill. You're supposed to drive them, keep them together, move them forward. But they scatter with reckless abandon, like teenagers running from their parents at a school dance. You scream and yell until your voice collapses into a dry rasp. The cows respond by mooing, slow and unbothered, as if mocking your efforts, and let's not forget about the dung. Oh no! The dung is not limited to the ground beneath your feet. It is airborne. It's in your nose, in your lungs. It clings to your gloves, sneaks into your canteen, and somehow ends up smeared on the jerky you brought for lunch. By the end of the week, you're pretty sure you're roughly 12% cow poop. Maybe more. Historians still bicker over whether cowboy work was technically more dangerous than being a foot soldier in the Civil War. But let me tell you something. At least soldiers weren't expected to castrate calves under the August sun. That's part of your job now. Welcome to your new title, part-time cowboy, full-time livestock urologist. Sometimes, when you're exhausted and your back feels like it's made of broken fence posts, you pause and stare up at the sky. You think about what could have been. You could have stayed in the East. Apprenticed as a blacksmith, maybe. Learned to bake. Worked as a tailor, even. Anything, literally anything, that didn't involve getting kicked in the shins by a baby bull or singeing your palm with a branding iron. Your bunkhouse, if you're lucky enough to be assigned one that night, is a wooden shack full of misery and mosquitoes. There's no insulation, no comfort, just one splintered bench and 17 exhausted men who snore with the force of oxen giving birth. The toilet is a stinking trench, 50 paces out the back, surrounded by flies and occasionally visited by a curious rattlesnake. You haven't seen a real bath in over a month. Your socks could probably be registered as wildlife. Your feet, covered in blisters. Each one with its own personality, quirks, and emotional damage. At the very least, you're not alone. The other cowboys, ragged and sunburned like you, are just trying to survive the boredom, the heatstroke, and the various bodily embarrassments that come with the territory. At night, you gather around the fire. You tell stories, tall tales, mostly. Fantasies about outdrawing bandits or romancing women you've never actually spoken to. In reality, the most lethal thing you've ever shot was a deranged squirrel, and the closest you've been to love was the time a milkmaid acknowledged your existence from 60 feet away. Feeling thirsty? There's always coffee. That is, if you're okay with yesterday's grounds boiled in a rusted pot and strained through somebody's sock. Want water? You can have it, if you don't mind scooping it from a creek where a horse just relieved himself. Your canteen tastes like warm regret, seasoned with metal and stale leather. Here's a fun little horror story. Cowboys once used prickly pear cactus pads as toilet paper. Yes, really. And yes, it went about as well as you're picturing. The resulting injuries led to folk remedies you'll never forget, including slathering your wounded behind with warm animal fat. Sweet dreams. Your food is prepared by the camp cookie, who has a rare talent for making every meal taste like burnt gravel. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Beans. Salt pork that squeals. Biscuits so hard they could replace your horseshoes. Dessert is a luxury. If you manage to keep the cattle from escaping today, you might get half a peach. Maybe. If the cook's in a good mood, still convinced being a cowboy was heroic, at the end of the day, you lie back beneath the stars, using your saddle as a pillow, your hat pulled low over your eyes to keep the moonlight out. Coyotes howl in the distance. Something scuttles through the dry grass nearby. It might be a skunk. Or a snake. Your blanket is damp. Your back is sore, and tomorrow promises more of the same, and yet, as strange as it seems, there's a kind of quiet comfort to it all. The prairie stretches out in all directions, vast and still. The wind brushes through the grass like a whispered lullaby. Your eyelids grow heavy. Yes, it sucks to be a cowboy. But in the middle of all this hardship and grime, there's a shared peace in the struggle. A strange sense of belonging among the sunburned, the saddle sore, and the silently suffering. Everyone out here is just as tired as you. And somehow, that makes it bearable. You wake up face first in the dirt, your cheek pressed into the cracked earth like it's a feather pillow. Somehow, it's still softer than your actual bedroll, which feels like a sack filled with rocks and broken promises. A brittle stalk of dried grass clings to your lip, and when you move to spit it out, your spine protests with a groan loud enough to scare off the morning birds. Your back feels like it spent the night being run over repeatedly by a freight wagon, maybe two. Welcome back to cowboy life. Glamour level, non-existent. Romance level, absolutely zero. Today, there will be no galloping triumphantly into town with pistols blazing and a sunset lighting your path. Instead, you're back to the basics. Scooping up cow pies, wrangling rebellious strands of fence wire, and wondering quietly if the universe is just messing with you for fun, you begin your so-called morning routine. It's not graceful or inspiring. It's a clumsy mix of stretching out joints that feel rusted, yawning wide enough to scare off the flies, cursing under your breath in 5 creative ways, and praying your foot doesn't land on a scorpion. Because that's not just a theoretical concern. 2 weeks ago, Lanky Pete found out the hard way. He slid his boot on, and next thing you know, he was shrieking like a church bell being struck by lightning. He hobbled around camp for days afterward, and earned himself a brand new nickname. Now everyone calls him Boots, and nobody lets him forget it. Once you've survived the wildlife that might or might not be living in your footwear, it's time to face the actual job. Spoiler alert, you are not some mysterious, pistol-twirling hero from a dime store western. You're more like the dirtiest maintenance worker in a 100-mile radius who happens to ride a horse. Your first assignment for the day: fixing a stretch of barbed wire fence that a group of overzealous cows managed to knock over during the night. Again. Always the same stretch, always the same cows, and always your problem. You trudge out to the site, gloved hands at the ready, already sweating even though the sun's barely cleared the ridge. The heat presses down on you like a judgment. Your hat is doing its best to shield your face, but the sun is relentless, crawling down your neck like fire. You wrestle with rolls of barbed wire that coil like angry snakes, rusted and sharp, snagging onto anything they touch, your sleeves, your gloves, your exposed forearm, and most insultingly, your dignity. You curse the cow who barreled through the fence like a battering ram, the fence itself for being so flimsy, and the cruel irony that you're out here shedding blood and sweat without so much as a hazard bonus. Historians still debate whether the death of the open-range era coincided with the rise of barbed wire fencing, but one thing is certain. For you, this tangled nightmare of twisted metal and angry cows has definitely marked the end of your patience. Your brow is dripping. You use your sleeve to wipe it off, but the fabric is already soaked, full of grit and sweat. Your face is a sunburned road map of suffering. Your shirt clings like wet canvas, heavy and unforgiving. Your pants haven't touched soap in months and have taken on a strange stiffness, like they're trying to escape your body on their own. You fantasize about quitting. You fantasize about it every day. But then you remember there's nowhere to go. You're a solid 80 miles from the nearest town, and even if you got there, what would you do? That town smells like broken dreams and horse droppings, and the job prospects aren't exactly lined up waiting for a dusty drifter who knows how to shovel manure and curse under pressure. Once the fence is semi-functional again, which is to say, it might survive until one of the cows sneezes too hard, you head back to camp. It's lunchtime. Or so your stomach claims. But don't start celebrating. Today's menu is the usual, Cookie's finest attempt at breaking your spirit, served in a tin plate. His signature dish consists of overcooked beans, slabs of salt pork with the consistency of shoe leather, and a side of regret. The beans are so old they probably predate the cattle drive. The salt pork tastes like something cured in disappointment. The bread is just crusty enough to scratch its way down your throat and leave a trail of crumbs and sorrow, you eat in silence. You always eat in silence. Seated on a weathered stump beside a few other hollow-eyed cowboys, you chew mechanically while staring at nothing in particular. You all look like you've seen ghosts. The kind of ghosts who also shovel manure for a living. Conversation is minimal, partly because your mouths are full of chalky bread, but mostly because no one has the energy for small talk. What would you even say? This pork tastes like the floor of a barn. I miss the smell of a warm kitchen and my mother's pie. Anyone else silently reevaluating every decision that led them here? Probably all of the above. But no one says it. Afternoons roll in like a second wave of punishment. The chores continue. Maybe you'll clear brush along the creek. Maybe today it's time to muck out the stalls, or oil the saddles and harnesses. You scrub at worn leather that will still find a way to chafe your legs tomorrow. You mend straps and buckles that will fall apart the next time you actually need them to hold. There's no glory in these tasks. You're not rescuing townsfolk or fighting bandits. You're just trying to make it to sunset with all your fingers still attached. Of course, you've tried to see the bright side. You've stared into the horizon, squinted against the light, and tried to imagine yourself as part of some grand American myth. But just when you feel the slightest whiff of romanticism creeping in, your horse sneezes directly into your face. Your eyes water. Your shirt is wetter than it was before. And just like that, reality returns. You're not a legend. You're a glorified punching bag in a hat. One fun fact, if you can call it that, cowboys used to use axle grease as hair pomade. It kept their hair slicked down and shiny, but it also came with the added bonus of smelling like wagon wheels and motor oil. You're not trying to impress anyone, of course, but now your scalp itches and you smell like you've been rolling around under a moving cart. You attempt to bargain your way out of the worst chores. You offer trades like, I'll scrub the trough if you untangle the hay cart axle, or I'll sweep out the stable if you take perimeter duty at dusk. No matter what deals you strike, you always seem to end up with the worst task anyway. It's like playing poker with a deck made entirely of 3s and 7s. You think back to when you first imagined this life. Maybe you were 10 years old, maybe younger. Eyes wide with wonder, you dreamed of adventure, galloping across the plains, being brave, being wild, being free. What you got was cracked lips, permanent dirt in your ears, and an unending parade of chores that would make a medieval peasant beg for a career change. You step into the corral to round up a few of the younger steers, and one of them makes a sudden lunge, head-butting your shin with surprising force. You stumble backward, arms flailing, and narrowly avoid falling face-first into a fresh pile of manure. Your anger flares. Your jaw clenches. You consider yelling. But then the steer lets out a long, pitiful snort. It sounds so defeated, so utterly weary, that you find yourself nodding. You give it a gentle pat on the head and mutter, yeah, same. By now, your stomach is eating itself. That's how you know it's almost dinner. You grab your tin plate, fall into line behind 6 other tired souls, and wait your turn. Cookies stirred the same bean pot from earlier and added a few new surprises. Floating in the murky mess are unidentifiable chunks that might be meat, might be fungus, or might be the old belt no one's seen since last Tuesday. Afterward, someone pulls out a harmonica and begins playing a tune. It's not a dramatic, tear-jerking ballad. It's something slower, sadder. A kind of tired, dust-in-your-bones sadness. The kind of tune that doesn't make you cry. It just makes you stare into the flames and forget to blink. A coyote yips in the distance. One of the older cowboys mumbles something about a ghost horse that wanders these hills. You think about chuckling, but your body is too far gone. Part of you wonders if the ghost horse is just a regular horse who gave up and faded into legend. Or maybe it's a man like you, stuck riding a loop of mediocrity for all eternity. You crawl into your bedroll and lie flat on your back, counting the stars through the haze of campfire smoke. Your fingers are swollen. Your boots smell like a crime scene. Your throat feels like it's lined with sand. Somewhere close by, a cow lets out a long, mournful sound that mirrors your mood perfectly. Cowboying isn't fame. It isn't glory. It's labor. It's repetition. It's being a walking blister, wrapped tightly in sweat-stiffened denim. And somehow, despite all of this, you're still here. Just do yourself a favor. Don't romanticize it. Not until you've spent 10 backbreaking hours digging a new latrine because the last one caved in after a rainstorm. Then we'll talk. You wake to the sound of hooves thudding softly in the dirt and a harsh cough that could belong to either your horse or the cook. Hard to say. Both sound like they've been smoking pine bark and breathing dust for the last 20 years. The air is cold enough to make your teeth clatter inside your head, your breath misting as you sit up in your bedroll. The ground is stiff beneath you, your blanket damp with dew and your limbs stiff from the kind of sleep that doesn't restore anything. It won't stay cold for long. By noon, you'll be peeling off your shirt only to find it already glued to your back with a mix of sweat, dust, and regret. Again, today's assignment: a cattle drive. Sounds adventurous. Maybe even noble. Sounds like the heart of cowboy lore, the thing people imagine when they picture the Wild West. It's not. Cattle drives are the brutal marathons of cowboy life, long, punishing ordeals that chew through weeks of your life and leave you questioning every choice that brought you here. You and a handful of other poor souls will trail a herd of around 2,000 irritable, directionless, stubborn animals across hundreds of miles of unpredictable, uncaring wilderness. Why? Because someone richer than you needs them moved to the railhead. Once there, those cattle will be sold off for a small fortune. You might get a coin for your trouble, if the boss is in a good mood. And if not, maybe just a pat on the back and a reminder to keep your boots tight. You start packing your saddlebags with the essentials. The list is short and uninspiring: a few slabs of jerky so dry they could double as roofing shingles, a pouch of coffee grounds that smells like old bark, one crusty biscuit that could break teeth, a single knife with a wobbly handle, and the usual ration of zero hope. Your bedroll, still damp from last night, gets lashed behind your saddle with stiff, fraying rope. You grab your canteen and give it a shake, not to check for holes, but to find out if there's still something inside that resembles liquid. You unscrew the cap and take a sniff. It smells like metal, old leather, and something else you can't quite name. You screw it shut again. You haul yourself into the saddle. Your horse, ever the drama queen, lets out a long-suffering grunt and shifts his weight with the exaggerated flair of someone deeply offended. He takes one deliberate step forward, then pauses just long enough to scratch his ear with a hind hoof, nearly unseating you in the process. You mutter something unrepeatable and roll your eyes. It's going to be a long ride. The herd stretches before you. A slow-moving, snorting sea of horns, hides, and frustration. From your vantage point, it looks like it might go on for miles. The air is thick with dust and the low, constant bellowing of cows who seem personally offended to be awake. You start coughing before you even leave camp. Once you do, the dust becomes a second skin. It coats your clothes, clogs your nose, gets in your eyes, your teeth, your ears. It works its way into your very thoughts. You breathe dust. You taste it. You sneeze it out in dry, rattling clouds like some kind of sun-baked dragon who gave up on fire. Cattle are not exactly nature's most cooperative travelers. They don't follow paths. They don't move with purpose. They wander off. They stop and stare at rocks. They turn around without warning and shuffle back the way they came. They headbutt each other for no reason. Some lie down mid-step and refuse to move until shouted at, threatened, or nudged repeatedly with your boot. It's your job to keep them going, to keep them together, to steer the chaos in a single direction. That involves a lot of yelling, waving your hat like a madman, and throwing the occasional rock when nothing else works. And of course, your horse hates cows. Deeply. With passion. Every time one of the steers gets too close, he flattens his ears and does a little sidestep like he's avoiding a plague. One particularly enthusiastic sneeze from a cow sets him off entirely, and he bucks just enough to remind you that you're not the one in charge here. You ride on anyway. The hours stretch like the trail, endless and slow. Your legs ache from the saddle. Your back is a tightly wound coil of pain. The heat builds steadily, pressing down like a smothering hand. You reach for your canteen, take a sip, and immediately regret it. The water is warm and bitter, with the unmistakable flavor of boiled saddle leather and disappointment. Lunch is a quiet affair, if you're lucky enough to have it. You eat on horseback, reins in one hand, a piece of jerky in the other. The jerky has the chew and texture of cured boot heel, and your jaw aches after the first few bites. A mainstream historical fact: during the cattle boom of the late 1800s, drives could cover up to 25 miles per day, depending on weather, terrain, and cattle mood. Some lasted up to 3 grueling months. The most famous of these, the Chisholm Trail, saw over 5 million cattle moved north from Texas to Kansas in less than 20 years. You'll be lucky if you make it through even one. By afternoon, you're a stew of sunburn, grit, and resentment. Someone yells your name and tells you to ride drag. You groan audibly. Drag is the rear of the herd, where every step kicks a cloud of dust directly into your face. You tug your bandana over your nose, but it's about as useful as trying to hold back a sandstorm with a handkerchief. Dust seeps through the fabric, past your eyelids, into your lungs. You squint through the haze and spot another cowboy up front, riding point. The lucky one. The air up there is almost breathable. For a moment, you consider switching, but then you remember that point riders are the first to meet whatever surprises lie ahead. Snakes, holes, unexpected ditches, or a badger with an attitude. Your envy fades quickly, and don't go thinking cows are passive, predictable beasts. They stampede. Not often, but often enough. Sometimes a steer gets spooked by a sudden noise, a flash of movement, a snake slithering through the grass, or maybe just a weird thought passing through its tiny mind. One moment they're plodding along. The next, all 2,000 are thundering across the plain, hooves pounding like war drums, headed in whatever direction seems most chaotic. That's when you learn what real fear feels like. Historians still debate whether most cattle drive deaths were from accidents or violent conflict. But all agree on this: stampedes were fast, ugly, and unforgiving. They didn't give you time to think. Just time to react. There's no elegant method to stopping a stampede. You shout. You gallop. You wave your arms like a scarecrow on fire. You try to break the herd apart, steer them into tighter circles, anything to slow them down. It's chaotic. It's loud. It's dangerous. It's like trying to stop a brawl between 2 locomotives using only your voice and a rope. If luck is on your side, the cattle will calm after a few frantic miles. If not, well, you don't really outrun a herd of cows. You just try to survive the trampling. Evenings aren't restful. After riding, shouting, dust choking, and narrowly avoiding death, you might expect a little peace. But night herd duty exists. And tonight, it's your turn. Again. You're back in the saddle at dusk, circling a field full of sleeping cows with your horse half dozing beneath you. The moon hangs low and pale, casting silver on the grass. The wind rustles softly. From the tree lean, you hear the distant yip of coyotes who sound like they're laughing at your misfortune. To keep the herd calm, you sing. That's not a joke. Cowboys sang to cattle at night, and not because they liked the sound of their own voices. A soft, steady tune helps keep the cows relaxed, less prone to panic. So you hum a cracked and tired version of Shenandoah, your voice barely holding together as you ride in slow, sleepy circles. Eventually, your eyes start to close. You nod off in the saddle. Your body sways. Your mind drifts to warm thoughts, pie cooling on a windowsill, a feather bed under clean sheets, and then you snap awake when your hat falls off. You look down. A nearby cow has opened one eye, chewing slowly, looking up at you with a blank stare. You find yourself envious of its uncomplicated life. Fringe tidbit for the curious: some cowboys tied red ribbons to their saddle horns, believing it would keep their horses calm during storms. Did it work? Who knows? Yours blew off back in the first mile, and since then, your horse has flinched at butterflies. By dawn, you're buzzing with fatigue. You haven't slept more than 10 minutes at a stretch. Your hands are raw from gripping the reins. Your thighs feel like someone beat them with a shovel. Your lips are cracked, your face is scorched, and your expression has settled into a permanent look of grim endurance. You still have 400 miles to go. The days blur together. Ride, shout, herd, chase, dust, sing, sleep. Repeat. You begin to hallucinate the sound of rivers. You start fantasizing about things like soap and fresh socks. You find yourself speaking to your horse as if he's your only friend in the world, which at this point, he might be. He doesn't reply. But he also doesn't argue or judge, which counts for something. That night, you lie back on the bare dirt, your thin blanket offering little protection against the cold. It smells like mildew and wet sheep. You stare at the sky. Your body aches. Your soul aches. You wonder, just for a second, what brought you here? Was it the dream of freedom? Of open range and untamed land? Turns out, freedom tastes like grit and feels like saddle sores rubbed raw by 12 hours of dust, but tomorrow you'll climb back into that saddle and do it all again. Because in the end, you're a cowboy. And cowboys don't quit, they just sit real quiet by the fire and complain without saying a word. You're still chewing dust from yesterday, as if it's become part of you. A fine layer lines your teeth, settles on your tongue, and clings to your gums like it belongs there. Your mouth is parched, every swallow scraping the back of your throat like gravel. Your lips have cracked into dry, stinging seams. Your tongue feels like it's been scrubbed with a cactus and left out in the sun to dry. And somehow, it's not even dawn yet. The sky is still deep blue, not quite night, not yet morning. So why are you awake? Because your shift for night herd duty ran long. Again. Because some cow got jittery, or someone overslept, or the wind made a strange sound and spooked the animals into restlessness. Doesn't matter why. What matters is you're back in the saddle, again, like some wind-up toy that got thrown into the dirt and then wound up anyway. Your joints creak. Your back groans. You're not sure if you're actually awake or just dreaming miserably with your eyes open. The herd looks peaceful at first glance, too peaceful, like the kind of calm that precedes bad things in books. You've learned not to trust that look. Not for 1 second. Cows have a mysterious sense for when everything seems too quiet. They sniff out comfort like it's weakness and wait for it to lull you into a false sense of ease before they erupt into chaos. Your job tonight is simple on paper: keep them calm. That's all. Every hour. All night. No naps. No breaks. Just you, your horse, and 1,000 bulky, unpredictable beasts with poor eyesight and worse tempers that might panic if an owl clears its throat the wrong way. Night duty means singing. Always. You start to hum something soft and slow, your voice rough with dust and sleep deprivation. It might be a lullaby, or it might just be a tune you barely remember from when you were small. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that counts is the rhythm, steady, low, gentle. You're not trying to entertain. You're not trying to impress. You're just trying to lull 2,000 tons of beef into docility. You've become a cow whisperer, not by skill, but by sheer necessity. Sometimes, if you're lucky, another cowboy joins in from somewhere across the herd. His voice wobbles through the darkness, off-key and dry, like a ghost with a sore throat who forgot the lyrics halfway through. A few cows snort softly. One lets out a long, low sound that lands somewhere between a yawn and the audible sigh of an exhausted soul reconsidering all life choices. You nod slowly. Same, buddy. Same, it's so dark you can't even see your own boots. You just feel them on your feet, stiff and worn, pressing against your stirrups. Your horse moves carefully beneath you. His steps slow and thoughtful. His ears flick constantly, twitching at night bugs and far-off howls that float in from the tree-line. Somewhere, a coyote calls out. The sound rises high and thin and lingers in the cold air like a morning song. For a second, everything goes still, even the cows seem to pause and listen. Historians like to argue about where the cowboy singing tradition began. Some say it came from African American cowhands. Others credit Mexican vaqueros. Some suggest it was a blend of both, mingled across time and terrain. But there's no debate about the purpose. Singing is the only thing that stands between you and a full-blown stampede in the pitch dark. A soft melody can soothe nervous animals better than any rope or rifle. It's not just tradition. It's survival. Stampedes at night are not like anything else. They are worse than nightmares because they happen while you're awake. When they hit, you don't see much. You hear everything. The sudden roar of hooves pounding across dirt, the sharp grunt of startled cattle, the scream of a horse panicking, the shouts of men trying to stop what cannot be stopped. You don't outrun a stampede. You don't stop it. You just hope you're not underneath it when it comes. You remember last summer. Big Luke. Guy built like a barn, could lift a barrel one-handed. He got thrown from his horse during a midnight stampede. Nobody even saw what happened. Next morning, you found one of his boots sticking out of a mesquite bush. Just the boot. The rest was never found. You swallow hard and keep humming. Your throat aches. Your lips sting with every note. Fringe tidbit, if you care for that sort of thing, some cowboys used to tie a small bell to their saddle horn during night watch. Not to soothe the cows, but to keep themselves from falling asleep. The idea was, if the bell stopped jingling, they'd know they were drifting off. You thought about trying it once. But the last guy who gave it a shot tied the bell too close. When his horse jolted into a trot, it snapped forward and cracked him in the ribs so hard he couldn't breathe for a week. So instead, you hum louder and grip the reins tighter. You ride in loops, wide, lazy circles or lopsided figure eights. Anything to keep your horse moving and your brain from shutting down entirely. Occasionally, a shape moves in the dark. Could be a cow. Could be something else. You tense up. Grip the reins a little harder. The stars are bright above you, indifferent. The moon stares down like it knows something you don't. Cold and silver and far away, it is bitter out here. Not the romantic kind of cold. The kind that gets into your bones, sits there, and refuses to leave. It's the kind of cold that makes your knuckles swell and your joints click. You're wearing your thickest jacket, but it may as well be tissue paper. The wind cuts straight through it, slides under your collar, and presses against your spine like a block of ice. You'd give anything for a real blanket. A fire. A proper bed. Maybe just a place to lie down without a root pressing into your ribs. Eventually, the sky begins to shift. A faint gray creeps into the edges of the night, pushing the stars into retreat. The horizon turns pale blue. You can feel the change before you see it. The cows begin to stir. Some yawn. Some grunt. One lets out a long, lazy fart with such tragic enthusiasm you almost feel sorry for it. That's your cue, time to wake the others and switch shifts. If you can muster the strength to move your jaw, by the time breakfast rolls around, you're barely holding it together. You walk like your joints have rusted in place. The cook hands you a tin cup of something that's probably coffee. It smells like boiled rope and lies. You drink it anyway. You're too tired to be picky. Desperation doesn't care about flavor. You sit near the fire, hunched forward, blinking into the smoke while another poor soul takes your place at the herd. You ache in strange places, your spine feels like it's been folded and refolded by a bored child. Your thighs have gone numb. Your arms tingle. Your eyes burn. Your hair has become a stiff, greasy sculpture of fatigue and windblown debris. It might legally qualify as a helmet now. Still think this is the romantic life of the open range. There's an old cowboy phrase, riding drag. It doesn't just refer to riding at the back of the herd and eating dust all day. It means you're tired. You're beat down. You're doing the worst job with no thanks and no relief in sight. That's you now. Drag rider of the universe, you catch a short nap, assuming your horse doesn't wander off or sit down on a cactus. And then it's time to get back in the saddle. Again. The sun is up now. Everything is hot. Blindingly hot. The kind of heat that makes the air wobble in waves. Your hat doesn't protect you. It traps the heat against your scalp. Your shirt sticks to your back. Your pants rub in all the wrong places. Your legs feel like they're being slowly baked in leather sleeves. The cows love this part. They shuffle along lazily, flicking flies with their tails. One plops right down in the middle of the trail and dares you to do something about it. You wave your arms. You shout. You prod it with a stick. It blinks slowly, chews its cud, and gives you a look like it knows exactly how little power you have. Eventually, another steer meanders into it, and both animals rise with exaggerated sighs, like they've just agreed to be mildly inconvenienced by moving again. You roll your eyes so hard your hat nearly falls off. As the sun climbs, the heat gets meaner. Your thoughts get weird. Your brain starts narrating your own life like it's a tragic novel. And then, our brave cowboy, soaked in sweat and regret, realized that cows were punishment for every bad decision he'd ever made. You chuckle. No one else is laughing. Around midday, the trail boss finally calls a break. The herd stops. You slide off your horse and collapse into the thin shade of a gnarled tree that smells faintly of goat and bird droppings. It's not comfortable. But it's horizontal. You close your eyes and dream of a mattress. A pillow. Just one soft surface. You wake up with drool on your cheek and a rock jammed under your ribcage. The cows are on the move again. You groan, stand up, crack your back, and climb into the saddle like someone accepting a life sentence. Your horse flicks a fly with his tail and almost takes your eye out. You ride on, another fringe tactic cowboys used. To stay awake, some would tie the reins around their wrist, wrap the slack through their fingers, and wedge the horse's mane between their knuckles. The pain from even the slightest tug would wake them. You tried that once. Couldn't feel your pinky finger for an entire week. As the day winds down, the sky flares with color. Gold, orange, pink, violet. The kind of sunset that makes painters cry and poets write terrible metaphors. For a fleeting moment, you almost forget how miserable you are. Then you catch a whiff of dinner, more beans, more biscuit, and a lump of something that might once have been meat. You eat slowly. Not because you're enjoying it. Because you're trying to figure out what it used to be. You sit around the fire afterward. No one talks. Everyone is too tired. One guy strums a guitar with only 3 strings and sings something so low and sad it sounds like a funeral dirge. Someone else snores while still sitting up. Another is picking ticks off his socks with a look of deep personal betrayal. It's cozy in the way a half-collapsed cabin during a blizzard might be cozy. You sigh and stare into the flames. The herd is quiet. For now, And in just a few hours, you'll mount back up. You'll ride into the dark once more. You'll hum your half-forgotten lullabies into the wind and hope the cows don't panic at the sound of a leaf falling, such is the night of a cowboy. No glory. No glamour. Just endless dust, quiet dread, and the deep suspicion that maybe, just maybe, the cows know something you don't. You know it's going to be a rough day when the only thing you have to look forward to is a breakfast of beans that are slightly less burnt than usual. That's the high point. The beans still come with a gritty layer of ash and a faint scent of charred wood, but today they aren't quite as scorched into oblivion as yesterday's. Cookie, somehow, managed not to incinerate the coffee this morning. It still tastes like a chemical experiment gone wrong, something between rust and battery acid, but at least this time it doesn't burn your throat on the way down. You take that as a minor miracle. A win, even. Today's assignment is trail wrangling again. No surprise there. Same job, different sunrise. You're already mentally preparing yourself for another endless day of chasing stubborn cattle in the heat, but the only real jolt of energy comes when the chuck wagon pulls up and the entire camp turns into a feeding frenzy. Cowboys charge toward it with the desperation of half-starved wolves, boots pounding the dirt like it's some kind of race to salvation. You'd think someone was giving away gold for free, judging by the way they throw elbows just to reach a ladle of lukewarm beans. Let's take a moment to discuss that beloved and cursed icon of cowboy cuisine, the chuck wagon. It's not cute. There are no checkered napkins or polished counters. This isn't some frontier version of a quaint food truck. What you get is a battered, wooden contraption that groans and rattles as it rolls, held together by stubbornness and old nails. Its tailgate folds down into what's generously referred to as a kitchen, though that term implies a level of hygiene and organization that simply does not apply here. Inside, there's a dented skillet blackened from years of open flames, a rusted pot that might be older than you are, a few sacks of flour that have seen better days, and a small tin labeled spices that contains only two ingredients, salt and disappointment. Running this culinary catastrophe is Cookie. He's more than just the cook. He's also the camp medic, amateur philosopher, and unofficial morale destroyer. He mutters grim aphorisms while stirring beans with a stick and has a stare that makes you rethink your life choices. What does Cookie make? Oh, you wish you hadn't asked. The main staple is beans. Always beans. They come in a few varieties, black, pinto, or surprise, which usually means whatever was left in the bottom of the sack. These are boiled over a campfire until they lose all texture and become a molten mush of flavorless sustenance. They bubble with a kind of vengeful determination, thickened by grease, dust, and rage. Salt pork comes next. The name is misleading. It's not particularly salty, and calling it pork is an act of optimism. It arrives in solid slabs, curled from age and cured in a way that seems more punishment than preservation. Trying to cut it requires not only a sharp knife but also an acceptance of your emotional state. It's the kind of meat that breaks your will before it breaks apart. Then there are the biscuits. More accurately, sinkers, named for their ability to sit in your stomach like a sunken anvil. They're dry, hard, and capable of doubling as doorstops. Combined with beans and pork, they round out what Cookie insists is a balanced meal. You call it survival fuel, and coffee. Always coffee. It's the one constant in this chaotic universe. It is brewed directly over flames until it becomes so dark and thick you suspect it could power a locomotive. The taste is something like scorched leather boiled in axle grease. You drink it from a tin cup that's still hot enough to brand your palm. The surface is always dotted with floating coffee grounds, little black islands of misery. You quickly learn how to sip around them or risk having to chew your drink like gritty oatmeal. Now here's a mainstream fact, just to impress no one: the chuck wagon was the brainchild of Charles Goodnight, a cattleman in the 1860s. He took an old army wagon and turned it into a rolling kitchen. It revolutionized long cattle drives by making food mobile. Not good food, mind you. Just consistent. And when you're 200 miles from civilization, consistent counts. Every cowboy has their so-called favorite dish. This is usually the one that didn't result in 3 days of gut-wrenching agony. One guy insists that Cookie's molasses cake is a gift from heaven, even though it only appears once a season and might not even be real. Another cowboy claims the biscuits were fluffier last year. You assume this is some sort of nostalgia-fueled trauma response, because you've never seen anything fluffy come out of that chuck wagon. One time, you had stew. Actual stew. With carrots. Real, orange, honest-to-goodness carrots. It felt like royalty. Turned out Cookie had bartered a saddle blanket in the last town for a few limp vegetables. That carrot stew became legend. Cowboys still talk about it around the fire when spirits dip too low, like it was some lost feast of El Dorado. It was the only time someone used the word flavor and meant it. Of course, hygiene is not exactly a priority out here. The same hands that are cutting up onions might have just finished burying a squirrel behind camp. Your spoon hasn't been washed in weeks. Your cup smells faintly of hoof oil. There's no soap. No sanitizer. Just a splash of whiskey and a half-hearted rinse, followed by a quick shrug and a good enough. Here's a fringe fact you'll wish you didn't know: some chuckwagon cooks swore by seasoning their coffee pots with bacon grease. Supposedly added depth. Realistically, it added the sensation of drinking campfire-flavored regret with every sip. It's a tradition that may explain why so many cowboys lost the ability to taste anything beyond bitterness and ash. Eventually, you lower your expectations. Far. Food poisoning isn't something you worry about. It's something you plan around. And still, you eat. Because there is nothing else. You sit in the dirt, surrounded by other broken cowboys with 1,000-yard stares, and shovel down another serving of beans. No one says much. You've all reached the quiet stage of acceptance. Mealtime is also gossip hour. That's when the rumors fly. Who's talking about quitting? Who's nursing a rash in places that shouldn't itch? Who tried to sneak off with extra sugar rations? Cookie once caught someone pilfering a tin of salt and made him sleep next to the oxen for a week. Not as punishment for the theft, but because the oxen snored less. Cleanup is generous with the word clean. You scrape your tin plate with a stick, then dunk it into a communal pail of murky water that smells like the ghost of a stew from 3 weeks ago. Floaters are grounds for scolding. Cookie's rules. Nobody argues. Nobody wants to hear him yell. The chuckwagon carries more than just food. It holds flour, coffee, sugar and hard lumps, lard, and sometimes hardtack or crackers, luxuries on the trail. Tobacco is rationed out with care. A few bottles of snake oil slosh around in the corner, each one promising to cure everything from saddle sores to heartbreak. And then there's that infamous tin of peaches. It's been in the chuckwagon for years. Passed around like myth. Too old to open, too valuable to toss. You've watched men try to barter for it like diplomats negotiating a ceasefire. No one ever wins. Occasionally, there's dessert. Dried fruit if you're lucky. Maybe a drizzle of molasses on top of a chunk of hardtack. Or the legendary cowboy pudding, which is just cold beans topped with canned milk and served with a straight face. You pretend it's delicious. Everyone does. You need to believe in something. Historians argue to this day whether chuckwagon cooking was a reflection of regional cuisine or just desperate improvisation. Either way, it was always the same: cheap, filling, and rarely fresh. It kept you going, if not happy. The worst part is the repetition. The endless sameness. You start dreaming about real food. Eggs with runny yolks. Crispy bacon. Fresh bread. One cowboy once tried to fry a snake, just to break the routine. It didn't go well. Another ate cactus after losing a bet and had to ride standing up for 3 days. Even the cows gave him side-eye. Sometimes, you chew grass just to remember what green tastes like. Water isn't much better. Your canteen might be full, but the water is warm, tinged with the flavor of old metal, and likely filtered through someone's sock. Clean streams are rare. Risking dysentery becomes a part of life. One guy claimed he could taste which horse had been upstream. No one asked him to elaborate. Cowboys develop coping strategies. Some carry little packets of chili powder to distract their mouths. Others chew tobacco just to overwhelm their taste buds. One fellow keeps a sprig of dried mint tucked into his hatband, for luck or freshness, or maybe just to remember that the world once contained plants that didn't taste like sand. Mealtime is also the only moment when your body stops moving. You sit. You breathe. You blink slowly and try to pretend that you're not itchy, crusty, and vaguely vibrating with exhaustion. And you think, maybe one day, if you survive this, you'll open a restaurant. One with forks. With real napkins. With butter, and gravy, and food that doesn't make you cry inside, but that dream fades when Cookie slams the wagon closed and curses the wheel that always sticks. Everyone mounts up again, stomachs full of bean paste and broken dreams. The chuckwagon groans as it rolls behind you, trailing dust, smoke, and the lingering scent of regret reheated over open flame, and you? You burp once, soft and solemn. It tastes like scorched coffee, ancient pork, and shame. You are officially halfway through the drive, and your body has begun to feel like a slow-motion disaster. Every inch of you aches in protest. Your thighs are rubbed raw from endless hours in the saddle, the inside seams of your pants now more friction than fabric. Your hands are permanently curled, locked in place like talons around leather reins, and no matter how many times you stretch or flex them, they refuse to go back to normal. Your spine has given up any ambition of straightness. It sags with a deep, internal sigh, shaped entirely by the saddle and your mistakes. Even your eyelashes feel exhausted. And just when you think things couldn't get worse, they do. Now it's storm season. You wake up to the distinct, metallic tang of ozone in the air and a deep, unnatural silence that sends a chill crawling up your spine. It's the kind of hush that feels like the entire world is holding its breath. The sky overhead is painted in unnatural tones, smeared with a sickly yellow-gray bruise, like someone took a palette of storm and tension and threw it across the heavens. It isn't just gloomy. It's foreboding, the kind of sky that looks like it is unsure whether to cry with rain or scream with thunder. Spoiler alert, it plans on doing both, probably at the same time. There is no time to sit around feeling worried. Panic doesn't help. The herd senses the shift in the atmosphere before any human does. You can feel the tension ripple through them, a slow, spreading unease. Every cow suddenly lifts its head, ears flicking back and forth, noses quivering at the rising wind. One lets out a low, moaning bellow that sounds more like a question than a call. And then the mood shifts completely. You are no longer just a cowboy on watch. You are now perched on top of a giant, nervous, four-legged powder keg. Storms are the stuff of cowboy nightmares. Not just because of the weather itself, although that part is miserable, but because storms almost always lead to stampedes. Cattle are not brave animals. They hate loud noises. They hate flashes of light. They hate sudden movements. Thunder that rumbles through the earth like the footstep of some angry deity sends them into a frenzy. And when all of that hits at once, you're stuck right in the center of a 1,000-pound panic attack. Historians still argue whether more cowboys met their end beneath hooves or from bolts of lightning during these drives. It's a close race. Both are fast, brutal, and come without any sort of ceremony or gravestone. You just disappear under the weight of either thunder or thunderous hooves. The storm doesn't ease in gently. It crashes in, all at once. The wind hits first, screaming across the prairie like it's furious about something you did personally. It tears through the camp, lifts hats off heads, sends tarps flapping like frightened birds, and drives sharp grains of grit into your eyes until you're half blind and full of complaints. Your horse feels it too, dancing beneath you with anxious, jittery steps, ears back, every muscle tensed like a loaded spring. Then comes the rain. It doesn't drizzle. It doesn't patter. It slams into you like cold, liquid walls, soaking through your coat, shirt, and soul in a matter of seconds. Your clothes turn to heavy, wet paper. Your boots squelch every time you shift in the saddle. It's a full-body soak that laughs at the idea of protection, and then lightning splits the sky. What follows is pure chaos. The herd explodes into motion. It's not just running. It's a violent, collective flight response. The sound of hundreds of hooves tearing through wet ground, mixed with panicked bellows and the shriek of wind, is like nothing else on earth. You don't get to think. There's no time. Your instincts kick in. You ride into the madness because that is your job. You shout, even though your voice is lost in the storm. You wave your arms. You try to angle your horse toward the front of the surge, hoping you can turn the lead cows and convince the rest to follow. It rarely works. The cattle bolt in every direction, blind with fear. One nearly crashes into your leg, close enough that you feel the heat and weight of its passing. Another veers sharply to the side and disappears into the downpour. You are soaked, your vision half gone from rain and sweat, barely able to see what's ahead. You scream instructions that no one hears. Your throat burns from effort, but it doesn't matter. The herd is too far gone, time becomes a blur. You lose track of minutes. Maybe even hours. You are nothing but motion and survival. The storm keeps hammering down, relentless. But eventually, it slows. The thunder rolls off into the distance. The rain softens to a damp mist. And then you are left with the aftermath. The herd is scattered. Some cows are injured, limping or laying down. Others are simply gone. The damage is everywhere. You find Shorty, one of the more unlucky cowboys, nearly 2 hours later, upside down in the fork of a tree, dangling by his belt and muttering nonsense. His horse looks as confused as he does. Here's a fringe tidbit to make you laugh or cry, depending on your mood. Cowboys used to carry small lumps of sulfur in their pockets during storms. The idea was that sulfur could ward off lightning. Whether or not it worked is anyone's guess, but it definitely made their pockets smell like rotten eggs and regret for the rest of the day. The entire next day is dedicated to the search and recovery. That means slogging through soaked grasslands, brush that pulls at your legs, and mud that threatens to swallow your boots whole. Your clothes from yesterday are still wet, and your saddle hasn't dried. Every step is accompanied by a squish. You whistle. You call out. You pray for a miracle. You find hoofprints, clumps of fur, trampled weeds. You track the scattered herd like some grimy detective with a headache. Eventually, you stumble across a small group of cows standing under a crooked tree, blinking slowly, as if they've just returned from vacation. You mutter curses under your breath the entire way back, herding them forward while one of them turns in pointless, wobbly circles like it's forgotten how to be a cow. You understand that feeling more than you care to admit. Back at camp, everyone looks like they've been wrung out and stepped on. Wet clothes hang over lines strung between wagons and trees, steaming faintly by the fire. Saddles drip steadily onto the ground. One guy lost his bedroll in the flash flood and is now sleeping inside a tarp, curled up like a sad burrito of misery. There is no comfort here. Not after a storm. Only endurance. You get through it because you have to. Warmth is a distant fantasy. Dryness is a cruel myth. Even Cookie seems drained. He doesn't shout or complain, just silently ladles out soggy beans with one hand, the other hand wrapped in what looks like an old sock, you eat in silence, staring into the fire, every distant rumble in the sky making your shoulders twitch. Your nerves are frayed down to the threads. Your boots smell like mildew, soaked leather, and a tinge of fear. You don't sleep so much as collapse. And what comes next isn't rest. It's just a blank space filled with dreams of lightning and hooves. Morning finally shows up, clearer but not exactly cheerful. The sky is no longer terrifying, just gray and suspicious. Everything smells like damp cow and regret. The herd is jumpy. So are you. Every shift in the wind feels like a threat. The trail boss looks like he's aged a decade overnight. He mutters something about needing to build an ark if it rains again. Your saddle is still wet. And so is your soul. You mount up and ride. For what it's worth, here's a mainstream fact: cowboys often made their own slickers from waxed canvas, hoping to stay dry in storms. They were long and heavy, designed to shed water and protect from wind. But when the rain really came down, even those failed. Water always found a way in. Your coat clings to you. Cold. Heavy. Your skin itches beneath it. Your fingers look like overripe fruit. Your feet slosh with every movement. A faint moldy stench is starting to creep into your socks. One guy starts having a conversation with a fence post, claiming it looks like his cousin Fred. No one says anything. That evening, just as your body starts to relax, just as your shoulders begin to lower from their perch near your ears, another line of dark clouds creeps in along the horizon. This one looks worse. The shape of it is ominous, thick and low, like it's dragging the sky down with it. You feel a slow tightening in your stomach. Pressure builds behind your eyes and in your ears. Your body knows what's coming before your mind does. You brace for it. Readiness doesn't matter. The West does not care how prepared you feel. Lightning flashes again, painting the prairie in stark white. But this time, you act before the fear takes hold. You sing. Not for entertainment. Not for beauty. You sing loudly, clearly, your voice cracking in the wind, forcing calm into the air. You slap your horse's damp neck. You ride wide across the herd. Shouting, moving, staying just far enough to see but close enough to guide. Other cowboys join in. Their voices rise above the gale, out of tune, broken but steady. It doesn't stop the storm from coming, but it keeps you grounded. And somehow, impossibly, the cows stay still. There is no victory dance. You don't cheer. You just let the breath out of your lungs. The storm passes. You are soaked again, drained beyond logic, but alive. The herd is intact, for now. You ride back to camp, rain dripping off your hat, every movement aching, but with a strange kind of pride building in your chest. You faced the storm and did not fall apart. Not entirely. Just enough. Nobody sings about cowboys in thunderstorms. But maybe they should, because this is what real grit looks like. You smell it before you see it. That unmistakable mix of sour damp leather, overworked horses, wood smoke, frying lard, stale sweat, and something like spoiled pickles. It's the scent of civilization, or what passes for it out here. It's a town, after endless weeks of chewing dust so thick it coated your teeth, choking down meals made almost exclusively of beans, and getting into philosophical debates with cows that refuse to walk in a straight line, you are finally nearing the end of the cattle drive. There, up ahead, shimmering in heat waves and clouded with smoke, is your goal, a railhead town. It might not be much to look at, but it has two things that matter above all else at the end of a long drive. First, something resembling civilization. Second, saloons. The herd slows as you approach the outskirts. The animals are as bone-weary as you are, legs stiff, eyes dull, some of them dragging their hooves like they're about to drop. And you? You're running on pure spite and the distant memory of sleep. Your muscles ache from the neck down. You have no idea how many days it's been since you've washed anything but your hands. You're still wearing the same shirt you had on when the thunderstorm nearly flung you into the next county. The shirt now smells like old rain, dried sweat, and regret. Your socks, if they can still be called that, have deteriorated into strips of cloth clinging to your feet with the loyalty of bad decisions. They offer no comfort and even less dignity. You get the herd corral just outside town in the holding pens. It's not graceful. There's shouting, wild-eyed steering, horses rearing, swearing loud enough to peel paint off fences, and one cow that leaps the fence for no reason other than the sheer drama of it. But it's done. The cattle are in. You step away from the chaos with the kind of exhausted relief that feels almost like disbelief. You made it. Here's a mainstream fact that gets passed around like gospel among the trail-weary. Towns like Abilene, Dodge City, and Cheyenne became boomtowns after the Civil War. These places exploded into life almost overnight, built around railheads where millions of cattle were shipped eastward. They were wild, dangerous, and full of more vice than virtue. But for cowboys, they were the final stop, and the only reward you could count on. You unsaddle your horse slowly, carefully. Every joint in your body complains. You rub the animal down with methodical strokes, trying to soothe the weeks of tension out of his flanks. You speak to him in a low voice, mumbling half apologies for every insult. Every curse, every frustrated kick of your heels. He snorts softly, maybe forgiving you, maybe just asking for oats. Either way, you feel better. Then, finally, it's time for town. The first thing you notice when you step onto the main street is the sound. It's not peaceful. Wagons clatter over boards. Men shout back and forth. Steam whistles pierce the air. Doors slam open and shut. Music from a distant piano drifts through a saloon window, mixing with barking dogs and the occasional loud argument. It's the sound of a place buzzing with too much energy and not enough control. The second thing you notice is the smell. Horse dung, hay, tobacco, spilled liquor, frying fat, pipe smoke. Unwashed bodies, and perfume all mingle in the air, layered like one of Cookie's failed stews. And yet, it smells like a prize. It smells like the end of the trail. You make your way to the bathhouse. It's not fancy. It's not even especially clean. But it is there, and it is open, and that's all that matters. You pay more than you want to for a private stall and a lukewarm bath, and then you're led to a tin tub that looks like it's held a dozen cowboys before you. You don't care. The water is cloudy, the soap smells like pine and desperation, and the towel feels like it's made of rough canvas. But still, you soak. You scrub until your skin squeaks. You wash your hair twice, then a third time for good measure. The water turns brown, then darker. You keep going. You scrape off the trail, the storms, the stress, the beans, the mud, the blood, the cow stink, and everything in between. You close your eyes and let the heat sink in. It's not just a bath. It's a rebirth. When you finally drag yourself out of the water, prune-fingered and woozy, you feel like a new version of yourself. Tired, yes, but somehow also clean and human again. Here's a fringe tidbit for your collection. Some bathhouses in towns like these offered what they called full cowboy renewals. For a steep price. You could get a hot bath, a straight razor shave, a haircut, a few stitches in your clothes, and a generous splash of a cologne that smelled like someone mixed whiskey with pine tar. Some cowboys spent an entire week's pay for the chance to feel civilized, even just for a night. You wrap yourself in whatever passes for a clean shirt and head for the saloon. The doors swing with a familiar creak as you step inside. The interior is dim and packed. The air buzzes with movement, noise, and a strange tension that never quite leaves. There's a piano player working through a song with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Over in one corner, a card game is well underway, the stakes too high for anyone but fools or drunkards. A woman with too much makeup and too loud a laugh leans on the bar. Near the mirror, a man is engaged in a heated debate with his own reflection. You slide up to the bar, order a drink, and brace for the burn. The whiskey hits like a kick from a mule. It's harsh, rough, probably made last week in someone's barn, but it does the job. You exhale through your teeth and feel your shoulders drop for the first time in days. You stay there a while. Could be an hour. Could be 3. You sip. You listen. You people watch. The saloon fills with other cowboys, some you recognize, some you prefer to avoid. Under the lamplight, everyone looks a little different. Faces are cleaner. Eyes less hard. You remember that you're not the only one who got dragged through the ringer on the trail. This is your reward, supposedly. But it's a strange one. Towns like this are alive in bursts but built on loneliness. Nobody stays long. Nobody builds anything. Everyone's just passing through. A stopgap between one grueling journey and the next. The saloon becomes a sanctuary and a purgatory at the same time. You talk to a man about his horse's strange limp. Another cowboy swears he got kicked by a steer so hard he tasted sound. You nod. You laugh. You sip again. You listen to a few stories, tell half of one yourself, and wonder why it all feels both comforting and hollow. Eventually, like clockwork, someone throws a punch. A spilled drink. A bad bluff. A sideways glance at the wrong person. Maybe something about a woman who isn't interested. You've seen it before. You know where it's going. You step away before things get bloody. It's not your fight. Historians still debate whether towns like these were necessary safety valves for a brutal trade or just boiling pots of desperation. Either way, they never lasted. Neither did most of the men who passed through them. They burned fast and burned out. You step outside. The night air is cooler. The stars hang overhead again, distant and bright. The smell hasn't improved. But at least it's not sweat and cow dung anymore. At least not entirely. You make your way to the bunkhouse. Cheap, cramped quarters rented by cowhands who don't want to sleep in the dirt again, not even for one more night. The bed is a board with a blanket. The pillow smells like old socks and singed beans. But it's indoors. It's horizontal. And it doesn't shift under you or moo in your ear. You fall asleep fast, like someone hit a switch. The next morning, just as the sun creeps over the town, the trail boss gathers everyone. The herd is mostly loaded onto the train cars now. There's still some paperwork, plenty of arguing, and the distant dread of logistics. The next shipment of beans has arrived. Cookie seems almost cheerful. One of the cowboys tosses his hat into the dirt and announces that he's done. He's going to become a bartender. Or a preacher. Or maybe a librarian. Something clean. Something quiet. Something without hooves. You almost believe him. But not quite, because despite everything, the dirt, the storms, the sleepless nights, the grumbling stomach, and the bruises that seem to multiply with every mile, a part of you already misses the trail. It's ridiculous. Illogical. But it's true. There's something about the rhythm of the ride. The quiet hours. The creaking leather. The way your horse's ears twitch when you hum. The gruff, wordless bonds between men who have all been miserable in the same way at the same time. You collect your pay. It's less than you hoped for, more than you feared. You count it twice. Then you tuck it away, buy yourself a new bandana from a vendor near the station, and hand off a few coins to Cookie, who acknowledges your generosity with a grunt that could mean anything from thanks to indigestion. You think about hopping a train. Heading east. Finding a town with libraries and bread ovens and people who don't smell like cow. A place where the streets are paved and no one yells at livestock, but you don't go, not yet, you lean on the corral fence, watching the last of the herd get loaded. Your boots are still damp. Your back is still sore. Your nails are still stained beyond recognition. And as you stand there, tired but strangely at peace, you find yourself wondering the one question that marks the end of every drive: when does the next one start? It's been 3 days in town, and you're already pacing like a caged animal. At first, it felt like you'd died and gone to cowboy heaven. Soft mattresses that didn't creak or crawl. Hot meals served on real plates with more than one ingredient. Bathtubs that didn't share their space with insects or livestock. For a little while, it was enough. You let yourself enjoy it. You convinced yourself this could be a better way to live, but now your skin itches in places you didn't know could itch. Your legs twitch at night. Your back misses the rhythm of the saddle, like a phantom ache. You catch yourself leaning forward in your chair, as if bracing for the next jolt in the trail. You find yourself wandering toward the corral without realizing it. Every afternoon like clockwork. You watch the horses flick their tails and shift their weight, and something in your chest tightens in a way you don't like to name. The town has beds, but it doesn't have space. It has food, but it lacks motion. You start to think maybe your boots miss the dust more than your feet do. This morning, the trail boss caught you just outside the stables, fiddling with your saddle straps like you were pretending not to be preparing. He didn't need to say much. Just looked you over and asked, "You ridin' with us again?" The answer came out of your mouth before your brain had a chance to debate. You said yes. Of course you did. Maybe it's because you're broke again. And the last of your coin jingles with embarrassing volume in your empty pouch. Maybe it's because there's no real plan, no grand alternative. Maybe it's because out there, with the dust in your teeth and your horse under you, is the only place you've ever known how to be, but don't romanticize it. Cowboy contracts are no one's idea of fair. You'd think that after dragging cattle across rivers, surviving lightning strikes, dodging stampedes, and eating enough salt pork to develop an internal crust, someone would hand you a medal. Or at least a decent paycheck. Instead, you get paid like a man who smells worse than he earns. In the 1870s, a cowboy averaged between $25 and $40 a month. That breaks down to about $1 a day, assuming no one docked your pay for losing a steer or mouthing off. And that's before you replace your worn-out boots, patch your shirt for the 3rd time, or settle your debt with the bartender after the unfortunate arm wrestling contest with a mule. Which you lost. Badly, mainstream fact, cowboy wages were painfully low. Especially compared to the risks. Trail bosses earned a bit more, sure, but even they weren't guaranteed fair pay. If the cattle sold for less than expected, the whole crew might walk away with nothing but blisters. Some outfits paid their men in scrip, vouchers redeemable only at specific stores owned by the same folks who issued the pay in the first place. A tidy little circle of control disguised as compensation. You gather your gear. What little of it still holds together. Your hat is hanging on by reputation alone, the brim permanently warped from sleeping on it too often. Your boots are cracked along the soles, and one heel is worn so thin it leans. Your saddlebag smells like old stew mixed with despair. You consider cleaning it but decide against it. Trail grime, after a while, feels like protection. As you prepare to head out again, a new hand joins the crew. He looks young. Unreasonably young. Shirt still has color in it. Hat still creases the way the store sold it. Eyes wide. Skin pink. You try not to smirk. You remember what it felt like to be that fresh. That hopeful. That ignorant. It lasted maybe 12 minutes. He hums while he rides. He asks questions like it's a game. He calls the cows kind of cute. You give him 3 days before that shine wears off. You mount up again. Your horse glances at you out of the corner of one weary eye, as if to say, seriously? But he goes. He always does. Just like you, the first stretch back on the trail feels worse than you remember. The town spoiled you. Your muscles forgot the saddle. Your gut forgot the beans. Your mind forgot how long a day can feel when you measure it by hooves and dust. Your back bruises easier now. Your joints protest every jolt. Even your hat feels heavy on your head, like it's judging you for signing up again. The herd is smaller this time. Only about 800 head. Still feels like wrangling a mobile wall of bricks. One cow limps for no reason anyone can figure. Another flat out refuses to move unless someone hums behind her. The job falls to you, naturally. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys swore up and down that cattle responded to music. Lullabies. Church hymns. Anything slow and gentle. One famous trail boss was known for keeping a banjo tied to his saddle horn, plucking at it during long drives to keep the herd calm. You consider trying, but your banjo skills make cats sound tuneful. Your Spanish vocabulary isn't much better, and consists entirely of no, beans, and confused apologies. The terrain shifts on this leg of the trail. The land rolls more. Hills rise suddenly. Streams vanish. Trees thin out. Snakes seem bolder. Less inclined to slither away. You keep your boots high and your eyes higher. You pass other drives. Cowboys you've never met but know the type. You nod. You exchange words. You share trail gossip like currency. One fellow mentions a railroad planned farther south, one that might cut weeks off cattle routes. Another grumbles that the price of beef is falling again. You tuck both pieces of news into that mental drawer labeled not my decision but definitely my problem. Historians still squabble over whether railroads saved or ruined the cowboy trade. They made the work shorter, but they made it rarer. Fewer cattle needed driving. Fewer hands needed to do it. More men, fewer jobs, lower pay. It doesn't take a genius to guess the end result. You keep riding. By day 4, the new kid breaks. His face is red from sunburn. His hands are blistered from rains. His patience is shredded. He throws down his saddlebag with theatrical flair and declares he's going home to be a blacksmith. You nod sagely. You've seen this scene before. Almost word for word. But he stays. They nearly always do. Quitting costs too much. And pride is louder than pain. Around the 6th day. The heat returns like a punishment. Not a friendly summer warmth, but a thick, oppressive heat that feels like it's pressing down on your thoughts. Your shirt soaks through in minutes. Your boots turn into ovens. Your hat becomes a sweat sponge. You try to drink more water, but it's hot too. Thick. Metallic. The kind of water that feels boiled even when it's straight from the canteen. Even the cows are suffering. They shuffle slower. They moo louder. One plops herself down in the trail and refuses to move. You try logic. You try pleading. You wave your arms. Nothing. In the end, you sit beside her and wait it out. Eventually, she gets up and walks again. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Just patience. Just being there. You sleep under the stars again. No bed. No roof. No doors. Just the sky stretched wide and indifferent above you. Some nights, it's almost peaceful. Almost beautiful. Other nights, it's cold and lonely. Mosquitoes find you. Wind sneaks into your blanket. A cow decides to bellow at point-blank range and jolt you from half-sleep, but it's yours. That patch of earth. That piece of sky. That space in between. That's the part no one really understands. The cowboy life is miserable. Physically, mentally, spiritually. But also, in a strange, cracked way, it's freeing. You answer to no one but the trail. There's no boss breathing down your collar. No building to box you in. No clock telling you when to pretend you care. Just the land, the sky, the hoofbeats, and the creak of leather. Just motion. Just being. You eat meals that hurt your feelings. You sleep in places that barely qualify. You live in the same shirt for weeks. And yet, in the silence of a sunrise, with the herd moving steady and your horse beneath you, something in you settles. The new kid has stopped humming. He swears now. Incomplete sentences, mostly. But still, progress. Cookie tries to improve morale with a new chili recipe. The result is so alarming someone physically tears up after the first bite. No one knows whether it's emotion or injury. Your horse loses a shoe. You do your best to patch him up with spare gear and quiet apologies. He gives you a long look, then forgives you. At least you think he does. Someone reads a letter aloud by the fire. Something about a harvest. A cousin's wedding. A dog that's gone missing. You pretend not to listen, but every word hits somewhere soft. You chase a steer through a field of thorns, fall into a shallow creek, and come out dripping, cursing, and somehow laughing. And in the middle of all of it, between the dust, the heat, the endless sky, you find yourself wondering how you ever thought you could stay away. The land begins to flatten out again, gradually at first, then completely, until you're staring at an endless plain that stretches farther than your eyes can follow. It spreads wide and indifferent, like a sun-bleached tablecloth tossed across a dining room that no one visits anymore. No hills. No rocks. No rivers. Just dry earth, a horizon drawn with ruler precision, and a heat that presses down like a heavy blanket, stale and relentless. It is nothing but space and stillness, interrupted only by the shuffling mass of cattle moving with the patience of saints and the occasional tree that looks more like a faded memory than a living thing. The kind of tree that clings to the edge of life with a stubbornness that feels less noble and more like it simply doesn't know how to die. This part of the drive is what tests you in a different way. Not with storms or terrain, but with time. With monotony. With silence so thick it buzzes in your ears, you ride for what feels like an eternity. The hours blur together. Your reins start to feel fused to your hands. Your legs go numb in the saddle. The only things that move with any real consistency are the flies that find you no matter how many times you swat them, and the occasional rattlesnake that lifts its head just long enough to glare at you with malice before slithering off like it has better things to do. Even the cows look bored. They walk with sluggish determination, not moaning or shifting much at all, as if they too have given up resisting the pace of this empty place. You start to envy them, in a strange way. They know how to move forward through nothingness without going crazy. You, on the other hand, start to feel like your thoughts are bouncing off the inside of your skull with nowhere to go. You hum nonsense to yourself. You count clouds that aren't there. You imagine the stories behind oddly shaped rocks that pass by every few miles. Anything to break up the sameness. And then, just as the desert quiet is about to swallow you whole, something shifts. Bandits, not always the kind from dime novels. Not always masked or yelling or riding in fast with guns drawn and horses foaming. Sometimes they are rustlers, quieter types who operate under moonlight, slipping through shadows like coyotes, trying to pull cattle from the edge of the herd while everyone's asleep. Other times, they're deserters from rival outfits, drifting from one drive to another, hunting supplies or trying to claim strays like they belong to them. And then there are the true outlaws. The ones who ride hard and fast, with rifles strapped to their backs and no respect for distance or decency. Mainstream fact, cattle rustling wasn't just a problem. It was a constant threat that followed every herd from trailhead to terminus. Some gangs were highly organized, knowing exactly how to separate a dozen steers without causing a stir. Others were loners with a brand iron and a dream, trying to heat and reshape proof of ownership in the dark. Both kinds made life for cowboys harder and more dangerous than it already was. It always starts with something small. A single cow goes missing. Then another. At first, the trail boss doesn't react. Not outwardly. He just narrows his eyes and stares into the horizon a little longer than usual. But when the third one turns up gone, he gives the signal. No panic. Just a quiet order passed down the line. Everyone knows what it means. You start riding longer shifts. You take turns circling the herd more frequently, even after dark. At night, you try to sleep, but your brain stays lit up, half aware, ears tuned to the softest sounds, trying to tell a normal cow fart from a footstep that doesn't belong. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys believed that sprinkling a line of tobacco or black pepper around the herd at night would deter thieves. Others said it kept away ghosts. You tried it once, out of curiosity more than belief. All it really did was confuse your horse, who spent the rest of the evening trying to lick the ground like he was part bloodhound. Then, on a night that feels like any other, you hear it, the twig snaps. A soft rustle that doesn't match the wind. A shuffle too rhythmic to be random. You freeze. Hand on your revolver. Not because you're itching to shoot, but because you've learned that sometimes presence is enough. The sight of a gun reminds people you're not just a shadow by the fire. You gesture to the cowboy on watch with you, and together, you move toward the noise. Slow. Quiet. Alert, movement catches your eye. Low and fast. Definitely not a cow. Too nimble. Too deliberate. Then, unmistakably, you hear it. The shifting sound of hooves being urged along. Someone's moving cattle. You shout. A figure bolts. A crack of gunfire splits the night. Just once. Sharp. Sudden. The echo rolls across the plains like a drumbeat. No one is hit. Nothing more follows. No return shots. No chase. The figure disappears into the dark, leaving only footprints and tension behind. Whether they took anything or not, whether they meant harm or just wanted to scare you, the message has been delivered. They know where you are, they know you are watching, they might be back, they might not. Rustlers tend not to leave calling cards. No one brags about a nighttime shootout. Not here. You sit by the fire later, saying nothing. Everyone does. Cowboy justice doesn't come with speeches. It's quiet. It's ugly. And it gets folded into the morning routine like saddle straps in coffee grounds. Historians still argue over the morality of frontier law. Some call it reckless violence, others necessary protection in lawless lands. Out here, far from any sheriff or circuit judge, there's no point in debating. You do what you have to. Lawmen are a distant concept. You are your own defense. Sometimes, you're the only one between order and chaos. The next morning, the trail boss takes a few of you out to check brands. One by one, you inspect the cows. Every brand is checked, rechecked, then marked with grease pencil to show it's been accounted for. Branding is sacred. It is identity. Proof of ownership. A cow with a clean hide is a question mark. A cow with a tampered brand is a fight waiting to happen. You find one steer with an altered mark. Someone tried to reheat the iron and reshape the original. The lines are sloppy, faint, like a rushed forgery. The trail boss doesn't comment. Just exhales through his nose like a man too tired to be angry. There's no way to prove who did it. No way to fix it out here. The cow keeps walking. Unaware that it has become a symbol of every headache a cowboy deals with. That evening, everyone is on edge. Camp is quiet. No stories, no laughter. Just boots staying on. Hats tilted low over wary eyes. Weapons kept within arm's reach. You hate this feeling. The waiting. The wondering. You'd almost rather face another storm. At least storms don't hide. At least lightning doesn't sneak. Around the fire, one of the older hands breaks the silence with a story. Says he was once held up by a group of robbers near the Red River. They took everything but his socks and saddle. Only reason they left the saddle was because they didn't want to carry it. He walked 15 miles barefoot before someone took pity and gave him a lift. He hasn't trusted anyone wearing a hat since. Even his own reflection. There is laughter. Tight. Uneasy. But laughter nonetheless. A few nights later, it happens again. A sound. Close this time. Too close. You grab your gear and move out with 3 others. Lanterns turned down low. Eyes wide. You expect rustlers again. What you find, though, is a kid. Maybe 15. Maybe younger. Alone. Caked in dirt. Cheeks sunken from hunger. Hands trembling. He says he was part of another drive. Got lost. His horse bolted. He's been walking for days. No food. No water. Trying to find his way back, you bring him to camp. Give him stew. Let him sleep near the fire, curled up like a dog too tired to explain itself. He barely talks. By morning, he is gone. So are 2 canteens and a tin of biscuits. No one yells. No one follows. You just sigh. The trail boss shrugs, says, better than a bullet. You nod. Some losses are better than others. Mercy doesn't always pay back, but at least it lets you sleep. The drive moves on, the rustling quiets. Maybe they got what they came for. Maybe word traveled fast. Maybe you just got lucky. You stop asking questions after a while. The shadows still make you flinch. Every set of tracks gets extra attention. But gradually, the tension dulls. Becomes background noise. Just one more worry among the usual suspects: dust, heat, beans, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, might be waiting to take what you're trying to deliver. You keep riding. You are a little more tired now. A little more cautious. But you are still upright, still here, still moving forward. The cattle drive keeps trudging forward, and at this point, the greatest enemy you face isn't rustlers with bad intentions, lightning storms rolling across the plains, or sudden stampedes from a spooked steer. It's something quieter, sneakier, and far more persistent. It's boredom. The kind that doesn't hit all at once, but creeps in slow like fog rolling through your skull, softening the edges of everything and making it hard to tell one day from the next. Each morning starts the same way. You wake up to flies crawling across your face like they own it. You brush them off, not out of anger, just habit. You eat something unrecognizable that Cookie swears is food, then climb onto your saddle with muscles that have forgotten what rest feels like. The herd starts moving, same as always. Same cows. Same trail. Same cursed blisters blooming on the same parts of your feet. No matter how you shift your boots, the terrain doesn't change much either. Dry, brown stretches of land marked by nothing more than the occasional tuft of grass or a rock shaped just interestingly enough to catch your eye. After a while, you start giving those rocks names. One you call Frank. He's big, cracked down the middle, and listing slightly to the left like he's given up trying to stand straight. Frank has seen better days. Then again, so have you. There's a rhythm to all of it, a repetitive cycle that plays out like a song stuck on loop. Wake up. Swat flies. Eat whatever Cookie puts in front of you. Ride through dust. Sweat through your clothes. Nudge cows forward. Eat again. Collapse next to the fire. Sleep like someone clubbed you. Do it all again the next day. You could set a watch by the pattern, if watches were a thing anyone actually wore out here. Most cowboys don't care what time it is. Out here, the sun and the trail are the only clocks that matter. Mainstream fact, a typical cattle drive could last anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, with some stretching even longer if weather, illness, or river crossings got in the way. Drives often covered 500 to 1,000 miles. The monotony wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. To keep from losing their minds, cowboys developed rituals. They sang trail songs, carved designs into spare bits of wood, created fake stories about hometown sweethearts who probably didn't exist, or invented new cuss words just to pass the time. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. You become convinced the same cloud has been hovering over you for days, refusing to budge. You hear a faint melody drifting through the air, only to realize it's just a cow sneezing with unexpected rhythm. You spot what looks like a tree on the horizon and feel a flicker of excitement, only to ride closer and discover it's just a weirdly tall cactus. You start to wonder if you're going slightly insane, but quickly decide that's probably normal. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys kept small notebooks hidden in their gear. Not because they were overly sentimental, but because the boredom was so intense that writing something, anything, felt like a form of therapy. These books were filled with uneven handwriting, crude sketches, off-key lyrics, and on occasion, angry rants aimed at beans. You begin talking to yourself. Then you start singing. Anything to fill the silence. Old hymns. Half-remembered folk ballads. Even the nonsense rhymes from childhood playgrounds find their way into your throat. One day, without realizing it, you start reciting the washing instructions off a soap packet you once read in a general store. You miss hearing voices. You miss chaos. You even find yourself missing the sound of cookie barking insults at the stew. The herd barely pays attention. They've become experts at tuning out everything but the feel of the ground and the taste of grass. Move. Chew. Moo occasionally. Repeat. They're masters of the moment. Zen without the philosophy. You start to envy them for their simplicity. The new kid has stopped humming all the time. He's moved on to muttering. Occasionally, you catch words. Mostly complaints about the heat, the cows, or the smell. You count that as progress. The worst part about this kind of monotony is the way it stretches time. A single hour can feel like it lasts a week. The sun creeps across the sky at the pace of a wounded turtle. But strangely, the weeks disappear. One day you're leaving a railhead town. And the next thing you know, you're halfway across Wyoming with a new blister on your heel and no memory of how the last 100 miles even happened. Historians argue whether the cowboy lifestyle built emotional resilience or just dulled people into numb, barely functioning shadows of themselves. You figure both can be true. You're still here, after all. Still moving. Still holding on to enough sense to not ride off a cliff. Meals are predictable. Lunch is beans. Dinner is also beans, occasionally with the luxury of a chunk of jerky so tough you could use it to chisel stone. You dream of fresh fruit. You imagine biting into something cold and green. Lettuce, maybe. Or a single grape. You spend half an afternoon just thinking about the crunch of an apple. Even an ice cube sounds divine. You would pay a full day's wages just to feel the crack of cold between your teeth. Conversation becomes rare. Words are rationed. You save them for instructions, warnings, or the occasional foul joke that earns an honest laugh and rolls across the plains like thunder. Those moments are gold. They remind you that you're still a person, not just a part of the dust and leather and cattle stink. When the rain comes, you don't even flinch anymore. You just pull your hat lower, mutter something sarcastic about timing, and keep riding. Rain's just part of the routine now. No drama. No poetry. Just another wet day on the trail. One afternoon, you find a skull. Probably a steer that dropped dead weeks ago. But your brain goes digging. You imagine a story. Was it a casualty of a stampede? Was it the victim of a fight over grazing rights? Did it taste cookies chili and choose death? You chuckle to yourself. Then you move on. Nothing out here stays interesting for long. Still, there's a strange beauty in the sameness. You start to forget what clocks are. You measure time by the position of the sun. The sound of the hooves, the smell of coffee brewing over a morning fire. It becomes simple. Raw. Honest. Almost spiritual, until your horse sneezes in your face and snaps you right out of it. The stars never get boring. They stretch across the sky in endless bands of silver and blue, cold and clean and far away. You lie on your back some nights, boots off, hands folded behind your head, and just stare. You wonder if anyone back home is looking at those same stars. You think of your family. Your siblings, if you have any. Your mother's cooking. The feel of wind rolling through wheat fields. Things you hadn't thought about in years start bubbling up, unexpected and tender, sometimes. The boys around the fire swap stories. Not because they're new, but because they're needed. One hand always tells the story of how he got mistaken for a train robber in New Mexico and spent a week shackled to a goat named Rufus. Another insists he once dated a saloon girl who was not only married to a local mayor but also secretly working as a Pinkerton agent and may or may not have been haunting her own hotel. No one believes him. No one cares. The lies are part of the ritual. Fringe fact: one cowboy once trained a prairie dog to ride on his saddle horn. It wore a tiny hat and sat upright like a general surveying troops. People called him crazy. He probably was. But he also never complained of being bored. The trail boss mostly keeps to himself. You can tell the years have taken a toll. His shoulders stoop more. His gaze never stops scanning the horizon, as if it's keeping secrets from him. He rarely speaks unless he has to. But every once in a while, he pulls out a harmonica and plays a tune so sad it makes the cows pause. Then he tucks it away like it never happened. Nobody mentions it. Eventually, something always breaks the lull. An accident. A sick cow. Sudden weather. The trail reminds you it still has teeth. One cowboy takes a spill from his horse and dislocates his shoulder. Another catches a kick from a steer and ends up with a limp. You help tie a splint with 2 sticks and a strip of old canvas. No one whines. Who would they whine to? You just keep going. Hurt or not, the drive doesn't pause. You write songs in your head. Compose letters you know you'll never send. You remember the sound of a church bell. The way your sister's laughter bounced off the walls. The warmth of your dog curled up by the fire back home. You reek of dust and cattle and sweat. Your shirt stiff with salt. But you keep writing. Because honestly, what else is there? One evening, just as the sun is falling behind a ridge and the sky turns soft with gold, the new kid looks over and asks, "Why do we keep doing this?" You don't answer right away. You think about it. Then you shrug and say, "Because cows can't walk themselves." He laughs so hard he slides right off his saddle and lands in the dirt. You grin. That laugh alone makes the day worth something, and that's enough. You wake up to buzzing. Not the poetic kind. Not the metaphorical kind that writers use to describe anxiety or excitement. This is literal buzzing. Loud, constant, and uninvited. The kind that fills your ears before you've even opened your eyes. The kind that guarantees pain. Mosquitoes. A full-blown swarm of them, thick as soup and twice as aggressive. You're camped near a sluggish creek, the kind that barely moves, more mud than water, with banks lined by reeds that seem to exist solely to provide mosquitoes a convenient breeding ground. The air hangs heavy, like someone poured it out of a bucket and forgot to stir. It's dense and wet and sticky, clinging to your clothes and your skin like a jealous lover who won't let go. The humidity is a blanket you never asked for, wrapped too tightly and soaked in sweat. You scratch at your neck and find it already covered in welts. Your wrists look like you lost a fight with a thorn bush. Someone groans nearby, muttering curses between slaps. One poor soul made the rookie mistake of sleeping with his mouth open. He woke up with regrets and, judging by the noises he's making, at least one mosquito lodged somewhere it shouldn't be. You slap your arm. Mississippi, try again. Miss again. You spin in place like a dog chasing its tail, driven mad by tiny wings and high-pitched whines. This is the cowboy's quiet war. A battle not of valor or pride, but of endurance. Man versus bug. No cheering crowds, no victory songs, just a slow erosion of sanity under the buzz of wings and the sting of bites. Bug bites aside, this stretch of trail means you're moving into a new kind of misery. Marshy, swamp-edged land. The hills have flattened out into a soggy carpet of mud and standing water. The ground beneath your boots gives with every step, like wet bread left too long in the rain. The cows hate it. You hate it. Your horse, whose expression has gone from stoic to personally offended, clearly despises every soggy minute of it. Mainstream fact, trails like the Chisholm Trail, and others that cut through river basins and lowlands, were notorious for being plagued by thick swarms of biting insects and swampy conditions. Malaria and other insect-borne illnesses were not just possibilities. They were common enough that some cowhands counted fever seasons the way others counted birthdays. With no real medicine on hand, treatments ranged from whiskey to prayer to simply riding it out, coffee that morning smells like sorrow and tastes like something died in the pot. Cookie's latest brew is somehow even worse than usual. You drink it anyway, because at this point, you'd probably drink shoe polish if it came in a tin cup and was hot. Standards have long since been surrendered. You try not to think too hard about the taste. It might be burnt beans. It might be boiled bark. It might be the lingering flavor of mosquito corpses. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Fringe tidbit, cowboys had no shortage of home remedies to fight off the swarms. Some rubbed garlic or kerosene directly onto their skin. Others spit tobacco juice on their arms and necks, swearing by its magical bug-repelling powers. Some believed in smoke, some believed in mud, and some just believed in suffering. You try the mud approach. It helps for a bit, until it dries, cracks, and starts crumbling into your beans at dinner, and still, you press on. Then come the rivers. If cows dislike mud, they despise rivers. To them, moving water might as well be fire. The idea of wading into it goes against every instinct they have. Trying to drive a herd of cattle across a river is a bit like convincing cats to form a well-ordered parade, except the cats weigh half a ton and panic at the drop of a hat. You ride ahead to scout the crossing. You look for a stretch that isn't too deep, too wide, or too fast. You scan for signs of danger, though the water is too murky to see much of anything. One cowboy swears he saw an alligator the size of a rowboat lurking just beneath the surface. No one believes him. But no one completely dismisses it either. You find yourself watching the ripples a little more closely than before. Crossing the river is an exercise in strategy and blind hope. You push the lead cows forward, hoping the rest follow. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the middle of the herd decides they've had enough, turns around, and chaos explodes like a spark in dry brush. Today, it's chaos. One steer breaks away and bolts upriver. Another refuses to cross, then doubles back, crashing into two more and sending them sprawling. The herd begins to panic, hooves churning the water into a brown froth. Cowboys shout, Horses rear, mud flies, and through it all, one lone cow stands in the center of the current, staring blankly at the horizon like it's contemplating the nature of existence. You ride hard, trying to force some shape back into the mess. You circle, yell, wave your hat like it's a magic wand that can restore order. Water fills your boots. Your horse stumbles once, nearly going down. Your heart leaps into your throat, then slowly lowers as your mount finds its footing again. You feel like a human mob, soaked and muddy and furious. Historians still debate whether river crossings were harder on the cattle or the cowboys. Both had reason to fear them. Drowning was common. Getting pinned between two terrified steers in waist-deep water could crush a man. You've heard stories of good riders vanishing beneath the waves without a sound. You'd rather not become one of them. Somehow, eventually, you get them across. You count heads. One's missing. You ride out with another hand, following tracks downstream until you find the steer stuck in a soft bank, sunk to its belly in mud. You dismount, loop a rope, and spend the next hour slogging through knee-deep sludge, pulling and shouting and nearly losing your boots. The cow stares at you like this is your fault. Like it has expectations. Finally, it lurches free. Covered in muck, eyes wide, legs shaking but upright. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. No applause. No praise. Just relief. You're soaked, freezing, and smell like despair, but that's part of the job. You set up camp on the far side. Everyone is wet. Every saddle squeaks. Cookie makes something he calls river stew, which smells suspiciously like the river and tastes like boiled shoe. No one complains. Hunger is the better seasoning. That night, the mosquitoes return in force. You wrap yourself in your blanket like a cocoon, head to toe, only your nose peeking out for air. You hope the bugs get bored. They don't. They never do. You itch in places you didn't think mosquitoes could find. Morning comes. One of the younger cowhens wakes up with an eye swollen shut. No one laughs. Everyone's had a day like that. You help him find a cool cloth and slap some mud on it. It helps. A little, and then you see it, the second river. There is always a second river. This one is slower, but thicker. Murkier. You scout again. The cows follow more willingly this time. Maybe they've finally run out of resistance. Maybe they're too tired to fight. You keep an eye out for rowboat-sized predators anyway. The crossing is calmer. The herd holds together. There's still some slipping, some mooing, but no panic. You breathe easier. You barely have time to appreciate the small victory when the drizzle starts. Not a storm. Just a steady, endless curtain of gray. A thin sheet of rain that doesn't pour but seeps. It soaks through everything. Slowly. Thoroughly. It ruins your socks. It flattens your hat. It dribbles down your collar, down your back, and into your boots. The trail becomes sludge. The grass disappears under mud. Hooves slide. You watch a cow fall, roll once, then stand again like nothing happened. You stop noticing the smell because now everything smells. You stop trying to dry anything because nothing ever is. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys tried waterproofing their boots using anything they could get their hands on. Bear grease. Bacon fat. Candle wax. You try the bacon fat method. It kind of works. Your boots stay drier. But now a mangy dog has decided to follow you and refuses to leave your side. You give up. The stink is everywhere. On you. In your gear. Inside your lungs. You are now, in a very real sense, made of wet animal and despair. One night, you dream of dry socks. You wake up with your face wet and don't know if it's rain or tears. Still, you ride, because the trail doesn't care. It doesn't care how tired you are, How bitten, how soaked, how blistered or frayed. It doesn't care how many times you've cursed the mud or how close you are to snapping and wandering into the woods to live out your days as a damp, grumpy myth. The trail only asks one thing. That you keep moving, so you do, because you're a cowboy, and this is what you do. You finally get a break in the rain, and for the first time in what feels like a century, the sky opens up with a mercy so unexpected you almost forget how to react. For a glorious 6 hours, the sun remembers it exists. It doesn't blaze or scorch, just shines with a warmth that feels like a reward. A balm. The clouds drift off, indifferent, and the world begins to steam. Your shirt, still soaked from the night before, starts to warm. Your saddle creaks with moisture trying to escape. Even the grass gives off a faint hiss as droplets rise and vanish. The cows steam too, standing still like great breathing kettles under the sudden glow. It's as if everything is trying to dry out at once. Eager to cast off the weight of all that damp misery, you find a flat rock, smooth and sun-baked, and lie back on it like it's a spa bed from some long-forgotten civilization. For a moment, you forget the trail, the herd, the dust, and the miles. You swear you can hear your boots exhale, a long, grateful sigh of relief, but this isn't a vacation. You don't get those out here. So you don't let yourself relax too much. Because now, with the rain gone and the sun back in the sky, comes a different kind of threat. A colder, hungrier kind, predators, not imagined ones. Not metaphors for guilt or madness. Real ones. With fur and fangs and sharp eyes that reflect campfires in the night. Wolves. Coyotes. Maybe even a mountain lion, if fate decides to be particularly cruel and you happen to smell like a tasty meal. They've been following you. Not constantly, not in sight, but you know they're there. You see their prints in the soft earth just off the trail, light, careful, and far too close to the herd for anyone's comfort. And at night, their howls rise from the distant hills, long and mournful, like off-key singing echoing through a tunnel carved from loneliness and old bones. Mainstream fact, predators like wolves and coyotes were a constant problem on drives. They rarely tangled with full-grown cows unless desperate. But calves? Calves were easy pickings. Vulnerable. And even if no one was taken, just one well-timed snap of teeth could scatter the herd, sending a night's work into chaos and forcing the cowboys to rebuild order from hoofprints and panic, so you adjust. The whole crew does. You tighten the guard, assign extra night shifts, and make the watch circles smaller and more frequent. Every sound becomes suspicious. The herd itself seems different now, more restless, more alert. They smell the danger before you do. They always do. Sleep becomes shallow. Short. Uneasy. You lie under your blanket with one hand resting on your rifle and the other listening for movement in the grass. Every shift of wind sounds like something approaching, then one morning, you find the evidence. Just outside the perimeter, in the flattened grass, a calf lies torn open. Not breathing. Not whole. A mess of blood and flies and still warm bones. The trail boss crouches beside it. He frowns, touches the ground, and gives a short nod. "We'll bury it," he says. "You help dig the hole." No one talks. There's no shouting. No dramatics. Just the silent scrape of shovels and the low hum of disgust beneath it all. You've seen worse, yes. But that doesn't mean it doesn't still twist something inside you. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys tied small bells or pieces of tin to the tails of calves or weak cows at night. The idea was that if one wandered or was attacked, the sudden jingling would wake someone up before it was too late. Others relied only on instinct and the click of a hammer beneath a blanket. You try both methods. Neither feels like enough. The predators don't leave. They linger on the edges. Waiting. Watching. You catch glimpses, movement in the brush, eyes reflecting moonlight, tracks in the morning dew. They don't attack every night. They don't have to. They're smart. They probe. They test. Always patient. One night, your turn on watch comes just before midnight. The fire has burned down to glowing coals. The stars return, scattered across the sky like spilled sugar on a black table. The herd murmurs in their sleep, the occasional shuffle of hooves or deep, contented breath. Everything seems still, then, a sound, a rustle in the tall grass, then another, then silence, not quiet, but silence. Thick, pressing, unnatural. The kind that makes your teeth itch and your breath catch. You hear nothing at all, and that's the problem. Your horse, tethered nearby, stiffens. Ears twitch. He knows before you do. You trust him more than yourself in moments like this, then it appears. A single coyote, lean and silent, slips from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. Small. Quick. Curious. It doesn't snarl or growl. It just watches. You shout, loud and sharp. You raise your rifle and fire a shot into the air. It vanishes back into the dark without panic. Not running like prey, but gliding like something that knows the way too well. Like a thief who's done this before, the rest of the night passes in uneasy stillness. No more noise. No more movement. But no peace either. Historians still debate whether predators posed a serious, constant threat or whether their danger was exaggerated to justify extra hands and longer hours. You think it's not much of a debate. Because one missed howl, one sleepy watchman, and you're down 3 calves before sunrise and chasing pawprints through the brush at dawn. The land changes as the trail pushes higher. Hills rise and fall in jagged rhythm. You move into foothills and ridgelines where the trees thin and the sky opens wide. The air grows cooler, lighter. Views stretch farther. You can see for miles. It is beautiful. Majestic even. But beauty means little when the herd struggles with each step and the path narrows into switchbacks only a fool would trust. Sound behaves strangely here. A single whisper bounces between rocks and comes back to you from odd directions. You startle yourself with your own voice. You ride point on a narrow trail that snakes along the edge of a ridge. One wrong step from your horse and there's nothing below but a long, sharp fall. You keep your eyes forward. You don't look down. You try not to think about the fact that cows were not built for climbing mountains. Then you hear it again, not a howl this time, something lower. Rougher. Less musical, a growl, like the earth itself exhaling beneath you. You spin, rifle raised. But there's nothing there. Nothing you can see. The shadows between the rocks hold their secrets tight, but the herd hears it too. It starts with a shuffle. A nervous movement. Then a bump. Then a low moo, stretched too tight with fear. Then chaos, a cow breaks rank and bolts. Another follows. Then 3 more. The chain reaction spreads like fire, and before you can shout a command. It's already happening. Stampede, again. You don't even curse. You're too tired for rage. You just drop your shoulders, lower your hat against the wind, and ride. The dust rises fast. Rocks and dirt fly into your face. You can barely see 2 feet ahead, only the blur of horns and hooves and the occasional terrified flash of a cowboy doing the exact same thing as you, trying to get ahead of madness before it wins. A cow slips. You hear the thud. Another follows. Somehow a third lands on all 4s and keeps running like it planned it all along. You blink the dust from your eyes and ride harder. You make it to the front. Just barely. You wave your arms. Shout. Whoop. Whistle. Do anything that might cut through the frenzy. Bit by bit, they slow. One stops. Then two. The herd begins to clump together again, like a giant beast coming back to its senses. Someone throws a rope. It catches. The line jolts, and just like that, the motion stops. Not gently. Not peacefully. But it stops. When the dust settles, you start counting. Always counting. You find one missing, you ride back along the trail. You find it near the rocks. Limping. Cut. Shaken. Still upright, you dismount. Walk beside it, matching its pace. No words. None needed. Just the soft thud of hooves and the hiss of wind over stone. Back at camp, no one says much. The trail boss walks past and gives you a solid clap on the shoulder. In this world, that means more than applause. The next morning, your muscles ache. Your ribs protest. But you're not broken. The herd is calm again. Still wary. Still skittish. But there's recognition in their movements. Fear, yes, but also trust. They remember who brought them back from the brink. The predators are still out there. They always are. Waiting. Watching. But tonight, they keep their distance, and you, for the first time in too long, sleep deeply. No howls, no shadows, just the soft breath of wind, the bright burn of stars, and the quiet thrum of survival beating slow and steady in your chest. The hills, once steep and stubborn beneath your horse's aching hooves, finally begin to smooth out. Gradually, the incline lessens until the earth flattens into wide, sweeping plains, the kind that carry the smell of dust and dry grass for miles. Ahead, through the shimmering heat haze, you spot a glint, subtle, straight, and deliberate. It is not sunlight dancing on water or a mirage teasing tired eyes. It is metal. Wire. Fences, real fences, posts driven deep into soil. Barbed wire stretched tight, humming faintly in the breeze. These aren't the lazy boundaries made by nature. These are human-made. Clean. Unbending. Full of intent. The lines don't meander, they impose. And in their stillness lies a kind of smug finality. You recognize it instantly, civilization. Or at least, its dry whisper, you've reached the edge of ranchland, and with that, comes a shift in the air. Not relief, not quite. Just a soft tightening behind the ribs. This is the beginning of the end. The final leg of the drive. The last stretch before the herd is handed off, the job concluded, and the dust settles around your boots in a way that says, you made it. But celebration can wait. Because the last few days come with a new kind of trial. Not the wild, untamed chaos of nature. Not stampedes, river crossings, or coyotes in the night. No, this is a more civilized sort of trouble. More polite, but just as maddening. Think of it like a boss fight. Only instead of fire-breathing beasts or outlaws with itchy trigger fingers, you get paperwork. Disputes over branding. Angry settlers waving deeds and shouting about trespassing cows. Landowners who stare at your herd like it personally insulted their grandmother. Mainstream fact, near the end of a cattle drive, especially when approaching railheads or sale yards in towns like Abilene, Dodge City, or Ogallala, cowboys often clashed with settlers, commonly called nesters. These farmers had begun fencing off large swaths of land, including stretches of trail traditionally used for cattle. The result was tension, confrontation, and in the 1880s, the infamous fence-cutting wars, when cowboys carried wire cutters to slice through barbed boundaries they saw as unjust. You ride past one of those very fences now. A thick stretch of barbed wire, strung right across a ravine where the old trail once ran clean and uninterrupted. A place horses and cows have passed through for decades. You stop. You scowl. You mutter something low and bitter, something only the horse hears. The trail boss rides up behind, spits into the dirt, and growls without looking at anyone. You spend half a day finding a new route. The cows don't care. They chew their cud, blink at the horizon, and shuffle forward like always. But you feel it. In your shoulders, in the soles of your feet, in the way your jaw clenches when you look at those wires. This land doesn't belong to the open range anymore. It belongs to claims, titles, boundaries, and rules etched in ink instead of hoofprints. Fringe tidbit: some old cowboys swore that the invention of barbed wire marked the death of their world. One even tried to sue a wire company for killing the sky. The court didn't agree with him. But still, you understand the sentiment. There's something poetic in it. Sad, too, that night. You make camp near a small settlement. It doesn't qualify as a town, not really. Just a few buildings gathered like strangers forced into conversation. A weathered saloon with squeaky doors. A general store with cracked windows. A row of shacks leaning on each other like old friends who have seen too much. And one determined woman selling what she calls pie from a folding table under a tree. It looks suspiciously like meatloaf wearing a crust hat. You eat it anyway. Hunger does strange things to standards. In the saloon, the air is thick with smoke and the scent of old whiskey. You don't talk much. You sit at a corner table while the other hands play cards. You watch the piano player. His left hand is stronger than his right, but he manages to coax something close to a melody from the battered keys. It sounds like hope limping on a sprained ankle. A local stumbles toward you, half drunk and half curious. He peers through red-rimmed eyes and asks if you're one of those dirt cowboys. You nod once, slow. He laughs like he's made a clever joke. You smile, slow, tired, deliberate. It's the kind of smile that usually makes people rethink their next words. He walks away. You sleep under a lean-to near the livery stable that night. Horses shuffle and snort nearby. You dream of nothing. Or maybe it's just the smell of manure and stale hay that keeps your sleep shallow. You wake up twice, for no reason, and stare at the stars as if they might give you a reason to go back to sleep. By morning, it begins, the final stretch. Strange, how it feels. You thought you'd feel relief by now. Thought that seeing the end in sight would lift something from your shoulders. But all you feel is, odd. Hollow, maybe. Like something important is winding down, and you didn't even know you were holding on to it. Even the cows sense it. They get fidgety. Not the usual panic, but an unease that's hard to name. Like they know, somehow, that this isn't just another pasture waiting over the next rise. This is something final. Pens. Auctions. Slaughterhouses. You don't dwell on it. But you feel it settle in your bones. Still, you talk to them. A habit you picked up somewhere along the way, maybe back on day 2 or 3. You mumble to them under your breath as you ride, like they're old friends. You name one of them. Maybe Rosie. She has a notch in her ear and the kind of gaze that makes her look wise, in a sleepy way. She never spooked. Never lagged behind. Never stepped on your boots. You like her, you tell her thank you. She doesn't blink. Maybe she understands. You roll into the rail town mid-morning on day 59. Dust kicks up under your horse's hooves as you ride in. The stockyard is alive with noise and motion. Buyers pacing with clipboards. Traders barking numbers. Workers poking cows like they're testing melons for ripeness. You've barely swung down from your saddle when a man in a clean waistcoat starts pointing at your herd and talking fast to the trail boss, as if he's the one who spent weeks hauling them across rivers. Storms, and terrain that tried its best to kill you. Historians still debate whether cowboys were ever truly respected, or just romanticized later by dime novels and Hollywood posters. In this moment, standing here with your boots caked in dried mud and your hands sore from rope burn, you feel less like a legend and more like a delivery driver. The cows are herded into pens. Counted. Then counted again. There's always a dispute. This time, a branding mark gets questioned, looks too much like the emblem of a neighboring ranch. Lawyers are summoned. Voices rise. You eat a sandwich in silence and chew slowly, pretending you don't hear the bickering. Eventually, the deal goes through. Cattle sold. Papers signed. Money changes hands. You might see your share in a few days. Maybe. If the trail boss remembers. Or if he's honest. Both are rare qualities. Fringe tidbit: some cattle bosses intentionally paid their men in store credit or tokens redeemable only in local saloons. Kept them close. Kept them broke. Cowboys who wanted to leave had to wait, sometimes weeks, to get paid in real coin. Some just gave up and took the next job before the last one was even settled. You unsaddle your horse. Rub him down slow. He's been good to you. Better than some people. You talk to him, too. Soft. Low. Like maybe this part is harder than you expected. You don't know if he'll come with you on the next drive. He might get sold off, traded, or left behind. You hope not. You'd like to keep one piece of the trail that doesn't stink of money and false promises. Some of the other boys head to the saloon right away. Others scatter to the shops, poke around for a good game of cards, or go looking for that mysterious pie woman again. You don't move. You just stand there. On the edge of the yard. Watching as the herd you've lived beside, bled for, and cursed at is broken into groups. Sorted. Tagged. Directed. Herded all over again, but this time by different hands. You try to spot Rosie. You think you see her. Then she's gone. Folded into the sea of hooves and noise and industry. There's no ceremony, no grand applause, no brass band waiting at the end of the trail, just the finish line, crossed without fanfare, and the quiet thud of your own heart, tired and wondering if you'll do it all over again next month. You already know the answer. You thought the hardest stretch was behind you. Thought that with the cattle sold and the trail behind you, life would soften a little. The ache in your back would ease, your boots would come off for good, and maybe, just maybe, the dust would settle. You thought wrong. Because now begins the final, most aggravating ritual in a cowboy's life, waiting to be paid. The cows are gone. Your saddle's stashed in a corner of the livery. For the first time in nearly 2 months, there's a real roof over your head. One that doesn't flap in the wind or drip cold water down your spine. There are walls. Floors. A bed with something resembling a mattress. But you can't enjoy any of it. Not yet. Not until that money is in your hands. The trail boss has gone to settle accounts. That's what he calls it. What it really means is he disappears into the back room of some dusty office with a cattle buyer and a half-empty bottle of bourbon, while the rest of you sit around like exhausted shadows with nowhere to go and nothing to do. You find a rickety chair in a corner of the saloon and collapse into it. The beer they serve is warm. The glass is cloudy. You sip it anyway. Then you count the cracks in the ceiling. There are 7, mainstream fact. Cowboys typically receive their pay at the end of a successful cattle drive, usually ranging from $25 to $40 a month, depending on their experience and status in the crew. But just because the cows were sold didn't mean the money came quickly. Delays were common. Some trail bosses took their time. Some didn't plan ahead. Some simply liked watching their men squirm. You're owed $75. 2.5 months of work, sweat, blisters, and bad beans. $75 for sunburns and storms. For stampedes and sleepless nights. Right now, that money might as well be gold bars buried on the moon. Every hour that ticks by, unpaid, feels like a new blister forming on your soul. You try to be patient. It doesn't work. One of the boys already spent most of his cut at the poker table. Lost quick. Didn't even flinch. Another walked into the general store and walked out with a hat so white and clean it practically glowed. Looks like it's never known a single honest day of work. You haven't made that mistake. You have a plan. And it's simple: a hot bath, a proper meal, a full night's sleep without worrying about your horse wandering off or a coyote sniffing at your boots. A week, maybe, of not riding anything that eats hay. That's all you want. It's the next day when the boss finally hands you your pay. He doesn't smile. Doesn't say much. Just drops a thick envelope into your hand with a grunt that might be approval or might be gas. Either way, it's the most emotion he's shown since the drive began. He walks away before you can thank him. Or curse him. Typical, you count it twice. $75 on the nose. Fringe tidbit: cowboys were wary of their earnings slipping through their fingers. Some stitched their pay into the linings of their shirts or boots to keep it hidden and safe from pickpockets. Others buried the money in the ground just outside town, in case they got too drunk and tried to gamble it all away. Some even gave it to a friend to hold, hoping that friend had more restraint. Most didn't. You waste no time. You go straight to the bathhouse, dragging your dusty clothes and tired bones behind you like an extra weight. The tub is old. Metal, streaked with rust. The water is lukewarm, maybe a touch warmer if you close your eyes and pretend hard enough. But none of that matters. To you, it feels like heaven. You lower yourself in and feel the trail slide off your skin in ribbons of gray. You scrub hard. Your skin protests. You find scratches and bruises you don't even remember earning. You dunk your head. The water splashes over your ears, your eyes, your nose. You come up blinking, gasping, cleaner. You soak until your fingers prune and your spine unwinds for the first time in weeks. For a few brief, perfect minutes, the trail doesn't exist. The mud, the rain, the flies, the cows, the beans, none of it matters. All that exists is warm water and silence. Then comes the meal. You find a quiet place that doesn't look like it serves rats with names. You order steak. Not dried meat. Not trail jerky. A real slab of beef, grilled with salt and pepper, still pink in the middle. There's bread too. Fresh, with a crust that cracks instead of crumbles. You chew slowly. Deliberately. Each bite is something close to sacred. Afterward, you sit beneath the eaves of the saloon and listen. The rain has started up again, gentle this time. It falls on the wooden roof in soft, steady taps. Not enough to flood a camp. Not enough to wash away gear. Just enough to remind you that weather doesn't always have to mean danger. You close your eyes and listen. For once, you're dry. You wonder what comes next. Historians still argue over the legacy of cowboys. Some say it was a passing phase, burned bright and fast like a matchstick. Others say it shaped the spirit of a country. In towns like this one, you start to believe it could be both. The open range is shrinking. Railroads stretch farther every year. Fences cut across old trails like scars. But you're still here. Your boots are muddy. Your hat is low. And there's something in you that refuses to fade with the dust. A kid walks by, can't be more than 6. Points at your boots, eyes wide with wonder. His mother pulls him close and hushes him like you're some wild creature with sharp teeth. You give a small nod. Tip your hat. The boy grins before being tugged along. You've been offered another ride. Another drive. Different trail. New boss. Same cows. You told them you'd think about it, but the truth is, the answer's already formed in your chest. You'll say yes. You always do. What else would you do? Sit behind a counter. Sort bolts of cloth. Sell buttons and pretend you don't miss the stars or the wind or the way your horse seems to understand you better than most men ever did. Fringe fact: some cowboys tried settling down after a few years on the trail. They bought land. Opened little shops. Married schoolteachers who wore proper bonnets and tried to civilize them. Most didn't last. The stillness itched. The quiet gnawed. The trail called. And they went. You gather with the others one last time before parting ways. One more drink. One more toast. The new kid clinks glasses with you. He stands a little taller now. Shoulders squarer. Eyes a little harder. He tells you he kept the bullet he found in a tree during that storm. Says it's lucky. You nod, smile. Maybe it is. You ride out the next morning, not because you must. Not because there's nowhere else to go, but because this is the only place where you ever really feel like yourself. The trail is different this time. It stretches south. The grass is greener. The wind smells sweeter. Maybe you just notice more now. The way the light plays on the hills. The way the clouds move like stories in the sky. The way your horse seems to fall back into rhythm like it never left. You start singing again. Quietly. Under your breath. By the third day, you smell like smoke and dirt and something wild again. You still hate beans. You still talk to cows like they're old friends, and maybe that's the whole point. The trail doesn't change much, but you do, little by little, dust by dust, ride by ride. The days continue to roll on, each one blending into the next like beads on a long, dusty string, and with every passing mile, you come to a quiet realization. Something strange is happening. Your body, once so stiff and stubborn against the demands of the trail, has stopped resisting. It no longer fights the dust or the saddle or the endless miles of nothing. It has become part of the trail. It is the trail. You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising, not because you must, but because you simply do. The sky is still dark, the air still cold, and you are already upright, already moving. You brew coffee thick enough to hold a spoon upright, strong enough to patch a roof if you needed it to. You sip it like medicine, bitter and hot. Then you swing into your saddle in one smooth, practiced motion. Your spine cracks on the way down, making a sound like dry branches breaking beneath your boots, but you don't wince. You ride. This new cattle drive isn't easier. Not by any stretch. It's just different. There's a new trail boss, who grumbles a little less than the last one and spits in different directions. The route has more trees, fewer rocks. More shade, less wind. But the work? It's still the same. The familiar soreness in your shoulders, the constant ache in your thighs, the rhythm of hooves and heartbeats and hoofbeats again. The cows still walk like they're angry at the ground. Your boots still fill with mud. And your hands are still stained with dirt that doesn't wash off anymore. It's funny, in a way. When you first started this work, it all felt enormous. Brutal. Every little hardship felt like a mountain. Every stampede, every swollen river, every night of hard ground and harder rain felt like something worth cursing out loud. Every saddle sore was a new kind of pain. But now, it's just life. You know which clouds are bluffing and which ones mean real trouble. You can pick out a limping cow from half a field away. You can tell, often before anyone else, which rider is going to crack under the pressure and which one will dig in when it counts. Mainstream fact: cowboys who could survive the grind of a full drive without fuss or failure were often rehired, year after year. They didn't have to be the fastest with a rope or the loudest at the fire. They didn't need to be the strongest or the smoothest. They just had to last. That kind of quiet grit was rare, even then. One night, as the fire crackles low and the stars settle thick over the sky, a greenhorn asks you what the worst part of the trail is. He's young, full of new blisters and big questions. He expects an answer like heat, or rattlesnakes, or mud up to your knees. You take a moment before answering. It's the quiet, you finally say. Too much time to think. He chuckles, assuming it's a joke. But you don't laugh with him. You just poke the fire a little and go back to your coffee. Fringe tidbit: some cowboys invented entire identities to fill the long silences of the trail. Full-blown alter egos, complete with made-up names, elaborate love stories, past lives filled with duels and heartbreak. One man even called himself Captain Lorenzo Nightwind, claimed he was an exiled Spanish noble. Nobody ever questioned it. Not because they believed it, but because he roped cattle better than anyone else on the drive. Sometimes, you catch yourself doing the same. Not the whole nobleman thing, but something like it. You drift off into your own head while writing. You imagine writing letters to people who never existed or who stopped waiting for you a long time ago. You narrate your day like it's a chapter in some slow, dusty novel. He rides into the dusk, dust in his beard, haunted by 37 cows and the memory of a pie he never finished. It sounds silly. But it helps. The new cook is better than the last. A small miracle in a world of scorched beans and black coffee. His biscuits don't shatter teeth, and his beans actually have taste. He's even got a secret stash of canned peaches. You only ever see them on Sundays, when the sun sets soft and the sky goes pale. But they're real, and they taste like kindness. Music has made its way into camp too. Nothing fancy. Just a jaw harp and a fiddle with a string or two missing. Still, when someone plays, the fire feels warmer. The laughter feels easier. Sometimes you hum along. Even when you don't know the tune, you find yourself humming. It's not about the song. It's about not being silent. Then, one afternoon, you get a letter. It's waiting for you at a small trading post off the trail. Your name is scrawled across the front in shaky ink that looks like it was written by a half-blind chicken. But you recognize it. It's from home. You sit under a crooked tree and read it slowly. It's short. Your sister is doing well. Your father's gout is acting up again. Someone is planting wheat in the old field. That's all. You fold the letter carefully, like it's something breakable, and slide it into your coat. Historians still debate how isolated cowboys really were. Some say they were totally cut off from the world. Others argue they chose the quiet. Letters didn't come often, but they came. And when they did, most men read them over and over until the creases wore thin. You've never been one for writing back. Never felt like there was much to say. The trail feels big when you're on it, but small when you try to describe it. The herd's slow this week. A few cows are sick. You stay up one night to keep an eye on them. You sit on a stump, staring at the sky, the stars like freckles on a dark face. One of the calves wanders over and rests its nose on your boot. It's warm. Quiet. Alive. You sit there for hours. You say nothing. There's nothing that needs to be said. There's peace in that. That weekend, a storm rolls through. Nothing wild. Just steady rain and wind that tugs at your coat and makes the tents flap like ship sails. You and the others huddle close, sharing stories that have already been told a dozen times. But somehow, they're still worth telling. One man says he used to be a preacher. Another claims he once robbed a train, though nobody knows if he's serious. You stop trying to figure out what's true. Doesn't matter. Everyone's chasing something. Everyone's running from something else. And the trail gives you just enough space to be somewhere in between. Now you ride through valleys. Green, soft valleys with grass so deep the cows practically disappear into it. The land is easier here. The air is gentler. Your horse seems to notice too. He moves differently. Lighter. Like he remembers how to enjoy it, you hum more. Not because you're bored. Not because you're lonely. Just because it feels right. Because the rhythm is back in your bones and your breath, you're not young anymore. You feel it every time you sit down, every time you get back up. Your knees pop. Your back stiffens. You grunt more than you used to. But in a strange, sunburned kind of way, you've never felt more like yourself. You were a person once. A boy with plans. Now, you're something else. Now, you're part of the trail. You've left pieces of yourself scattered across the land. In the rivers you crossed, in the dust that coats your gear, in the worn grooves of your saddle. And in return, the trail has given you something back. Grit. Silence. A way to calm a spooked horse in the dark with nothing but the sound of your voice, that has to mean something, even if no one else sees it, even if it never makes a story anyone writes down, it means something to you. You cross into Kansas, or maybe it's Nebraska. At this point, the borders blur. The prairie rolls out in endless golds and greens, wind slicing through tall grass like a whispered promise. You're almost at the end of another trail. And this time, you feel it in your bones, more than tired, more than sore. There's a gravity to it, like closing a book you didn't know you loved. You camped 3 days' ride from the railhead. Everything's quieter now. The cows are slower. The crew is too. Fewer jokes, longer silences, and a strange sense of ending hanging over the fire at night. You sit on a log and whittle a piece of wood that used to be part of a broken stirrup. Not because it'll be useful, but because your hands need something to do. Your thoughts. They're already starting to drift toward whatever's next. A new town. A new herd. Maybe even a break, though you're not sure what that even means anymore. Mainstream fact, most cowboys didn't stay in the saddle for life. By their late 30s, if they made it that far, they'd shift to ranch work, become trail bosses, or disappear into frontier towns as sheriffs, drunks, or storytellers. The wear and tear was simply too much. You start to notice the new kids on the drive, fresh-faced, high-spirited, full of energy and dumb questions. You used to be them. Now you're the one giving side-eye when they tie their bedrolls wrong. You don't mean to be gruff. It just happens. At night, they ask you what the trail was like 10 years ago. You shrug. Dustier, you say. But maybe I just had smaller boots. The truth is, everything's changing. More fences. More trains. Fewer open places. The herds are getting smaller. The towns are getting bigger. And the old trails, the ones burned into your memory, are being swallowed up by plows and railroad spikes. Historians still argue whether the end of the trail was a symbolic shift or a hard, economic reality. Maybe it was both. Maybe the cowboy never really died, he just put on a cleaner shirt and started charging by the hour. Still, here you are. Riding through the grass. Same rhythm. Same saddle. Same sky. You see the rail town 2 days out, a puff of smoke, a glint of steel. The herd smells it too. They get fidgety. You steady them with a low whistle and a wave of your hat. Just one more push, and you make it. You drive them in slow. Deliberate. Not for show, just because that's what you've always done. The yards are busier this time. There's more noise, more movement, more people who've never seen a cow up close and talk too fast and laugh too loud. You count them in. One last time. No one thanks you, but no one has to. Fringe tidbit: a few cowboys took to writing poetry about the end of the trail. Not because they fancied themselves artists, but because the quiet after a drive was too loud to bear. One man wrote, "The trail don't stop, it just forgets your name." You walk through town like a man just back from sea. People look, but don't really see. You're part of a disappearing breed. They know that, even if they don't say it, you sit on a bench with a sour cup of coffee and watch the train load your cows. You watch the smoke rise, the wheels turn, and you feel something like pride. Not for the money. Not for the miles. But for doing it, for finishing something that was never meant to be easy. Someone asks you if you'll do it again, you say maybe. But the trail already knows your answer, it always does. Now the fire has burned low. The last embers flicker red and soft beneath a quiet sky. The stars above the prairie blink slow, like tired eyes about to close. The herd is gone. The dust has settled. Your boots sit by the door of a one-room shack, scuffed and silent. The quiet here feels different now. Not the uneasy silence that precedes a storm. Not the hollow quiet of wide-open land before the stampede. This is a warmer quiet. A gentler hush. It is the sound of the world breathing deep. It is your own heartbeat, slow and even, sinking with the creak of old wood and the soft rustle of grass outside the window. Your hands are rough. Your back aches every time you move. But those pains tell a story. You carry every scar like a signature. You remember the voices of the boys who rode beside you. Their laughter, their curses, their silhouettes against the pink edge of dawn. Maybe you will ride again, or maybe not. Maybe you will sit right here and let the seasons pass. One after another, while the world spins on just fine without you. That would be all right. The trail does not really leave you behind. It just sinks into memory, into the rhythm of your breath, into the places where wind used to live. So now, let your breathing slow, let your shoulders release all they have held. There are no cows to chase tonight. No fences to curse. No rain to race. Just you. Just rest. Just the wide hush of the plains still singing in your chest. Good night, cowboy, sleep well.